why do we look the way we look? Most of it's down to dear old planet Earth. Its atmosphere, gravity, that kind of stuff. When you go on a week-long beach getaway, you get a tan. Basic. But what about living on a whole other planet? One astronaut spent a whole year living on the International Space Station. Zero gravity means no healthy pressure on your body, so his bones got weaker. So did his muscles. It also gave him more space between his vertebrae, so he got a bit taller. And that's only a year. The more time you spend at the beach, the darker your tan gets. So, what if we move to Mars? The first major change you might notice, after a couple hundred years, is your brand new skeleton. Gravity on Mars is much lower than on Earth, so your muscles and bones would probably shrink. Not great for surviving on a new planet. Gravity would make us feel our weight differently. If you weighed 150 pounds on Earth, you'd only feel like you weighed about 50 pounds on Mars. You'd need to eat more to get stronger and bigger to make up for Mars's weak gravity. Sweet! Time to grow some larger and stronger bones, organs, muscles, everything. There'd be one more dramatic change. Your largest organ, your skin. It's the most important barrier that protects you from everything. Germs, wind, UV light, looking totally creepy, you name it, it does it. You might just need a whole new skin. How do you feel about orange? Sorry people, green skin is totally sci-fi. Here's the deal. Carotenoids offer quite a nice protection against UV light. That's the stuff you find in carrots, sweet potatoes, bell peppers, tomatoes, pumpkins. A Mars farmer's market could make a fortune. The more of these veggies you eat, the more orange your skin's gonna get. If you followed a special diet and wore high-tech gear, chances are, one day, living on Mars might be totally normal. Living on Mercury would be really tough. It's the closest planet to the Sun, and it's definitely hotter than Earth, but weirdly, not hotter than Venus. It's really hot during the day, about 800 degrees, but at night, it drops to -290. Days on Mercury are kind of crazy. You know, when you finish the day, but you didn't really get a lot done? Problem solved, move to Mercury. A day on this planet lasts about 58 Earth days. That means you'd have a lot of time to get ready for bed. My guess, though, you'd probably get kind of bored. One excellent solution: somehow become made of metal, like titanium, nickel, or platinum. Those guys can handle extreme conditions. Life on Venus would be way worse than Mercury or Mars. Pressure might be a tiny issue. You'd probably have one long, never-ending headache. Standing on Venus is like being 3,000 feet underwater. Oh, and that thing we need every moment of the day? Chocolate. Air? There's not a lot of that floating around on Venus. There's carbon dioxide everywhere, and the planet's surface is completely dry. That means it's gonna be hot. 870 degrees hot. There are a few species on Earth that can survive the boiling point of water, and maybe if they mutated somehow, they'd survive Venus's crazy heat. 266 degrees is the record so far, set by a species of microbes. So get ready for an epic body transformation. Wanna live on Venus? You'd probably have to turn into a tiny microbe just to survive. Luckily, Venus's atmosphere has phosphine, which isn't great for humans, but microbes just love it. But since you're not a microbe, not yet anyway, you'd need to wear special gear to control the pressure and feed you air. It's not looking good. Maybe it'd be easier on Jupiter. Yeah! No. It's got no solid land. This planet's made of hydrogen and helium and is known as a gas giant. Unlike Saturn, you'd probably end up just floating around on it. It's like a giant cloud, and if you ever managed to land, it'd be like walking through a super thick fog. Temperatures fluctuate a lot here. It's freezing on the surface, and the atmosphere can be super hot below the surface. We don't really even know. If you lived on Jupiter, there'd be no spoken languages. The gas planet absorbs radio waves, so even if you could speak, no one would hear you anyway. And there'd be no music, so no dance parties. What's the point? People would have to communicate in sign language. Great! But it's not. The atmosphere on Jupiter is wild. All kinds of winds and gas clouds. You probably wouldn't even be able to see anything. So that's not gonna happen. Still, Jupiter is awesome to look at. It's so big that it can fit all the other planets in our solar system inside it, with room to spare. A trip to Saturn will set you back about a decade, and it'd be a big old waste of time. Saturn's mostly made up of layers of gas. It has no solid surface, so farming, building, or any other normal Earth activities are out of the question. Before landing on Saturn itself, you'd probably want to explore those iconic rings around it. You'd fail though, because the rings are made of millions of ice sprinkles floating in space. That's pretty hard to walk on. You might have thought that Saturn was going to be a good fit for you. Some layers of this gas giant sphere actually have quite a nice temperature. If you dive into Saturn, you'll get to a layer with liquid molecules and a cool 32 degrees. That's like northern Canada, Alaska, Sweden, except that you can't walk on it. Anyway, it's only one minor layer, and the rest of the planet is insanely cold. So I guess if you still want to live on Saturn, you've got some work to do. No biggie, you just gotta turn into a snowball or something. What about Uranus? Time is kinda weird on Uranus, so if you're out that way looking for a nice vacation spot, definitely choose this planet. A 2-week getaway on Earth lasts 3 years on Uranus. There's even a sea if you're up for a beach vacation. The only problem is that it's made of ammonia, that gross-smelling stuff they use for cleaning. But watch out where you land. If you get it wrong, you might end up spending a whole year without any sun. How would you change if you had to spend a whole year in the freezing dark Uranus winter? We'd need bigger eyes to see in the dark, plus more of that thicker skin to keep the cold out. We might even develop a new hearing system, like dolphins have. Neptune. It's another gas planet, but scientists think there's probably a dense core inside. If you took the plunge to live on Neptune, you'd probably turn into a space reptile or cosmic fish, endlessly floating around on the surface. Gravity on Neptune is just a little bit stronger than on Earth. Still, it'd be really hard to stay in one place. The wind there is super strong. You'd have to be much heavier to resist it. Time to eat again, woohoo! But this planet's really impossible to live on. Scientists don't even want to send another spacecraft there. Welcome to Pluto. Freezing cold, tiny, and super far away. Doesn't sound too exciting. It's even smaller than our moon. It would be so hard to stay on the planet. No more trampoline parks, people. You'd probably have to build yourself a huge machine that would spin you around, sort of a fake gravity machine. Still, you try spinning around all day, you'd need a brand new nervous system to avoid feeling queasy all the time. But Pluto's not all bad. There's a liquid water ocean beneath the surface, and ice mountains. If you got yourself a highly trained crew and a bunch of expensive gear, and regular supplies from Earth, nah, too much hassle. Spaghettification. Wonder if you can choose your own sauce? It's actually something you might experience if you ever tried to live in a black hole. It's the process of squeezing objects, like you, into long, thin cosmic strips. So, good news, you'll get much taller. Bad news, you'll be thinner than a single human hair.
The heart continues beating on its own for around 3 minutes after being separated from its owner. It occurs because of a phenomenon called self-excitation, when something generates its own energy. When we appear in this world, we have 300 bones, but with time, some of them fuse, leaving us with around 206 bones. And still, some have extra bones in their skull structures. Those are wormian bones, which are basically extra bone pieces found within the joints of the skull. If you laid flat the respiratory tubes in the lungs, they would cover an area as large as a tennis court, all thanks to 33 generations of branching. The brain is as cool as the lungs. It has 86 billion neurons, nerve cells that send messages all over your body and allow you to do everything from breathing to talking, eating and thinking, or doing sports. The brain also has up to 60 trillion synapses, the places where neurons connect and communicate with one another. That's more than all the leaves on all the trees in the world. And here's another fun fact. Your eyes are like car engines. They need fluids to function properly, just like an engine needs gasoline. So when you blink up to 20,000 times a day, you're basically giving your eyes a windshield wash. Have you ever blushed and felt your cheeks turn red? Well, did you know that your stomach lining can blush too? When you blush, there's an increased blood flow in your body, and that includes your stomach lining. It turns red because it has plenty of blood vessels, and when there's more blood than usual, it shows. Now, we all know that plastic is bad for the environment, but did you know that we can actually digest it in tiny quantities? However, our digestive system can't handle grass. Grazing animals have special teeth and several stomachs to process raw leaves and grass, while we're stuck with just one stomach. We all have two super fast muscles that control our eyelids closing. They're actually the fastest muscles in our body, and they shut our eyes within a mere 0.1 second when triggered. And while we still don't know why we blink, we do know that women blink more often than men, and that we tend to blink in unison when watching a movie with friends. Maybe it's just a weird human thing. By the way, every time you eat something, your esophagus, the organ your food travels through to reach the stomach, moves in a series of wave-like contractions, pushing the food forward. This process is called peristalsis. Your fingers don't have any muscles whatsoever. To move them, you involve tendons connected to muscles in your hands and forearms. Some people, around 12% of women, and almost no men have 4 cones in their eyes. This condition is called tetrachromacy. People with this peculiarity can see a whopping 100 million colors. Your body glows, emitting tiny amounts of barely visible light, the product of biochemical reactions going on in your organism. The light intensity changes throughout the day. Unfortunately, you can't detect it with the unaided eye. Marfan syndrome is a genetic condition that affects the body's connective tissues, making them more elastic. This can make you unusually tall, have elongated limbs, and often be extremely flexible. And some people use this as an advantage in their careers. Javier Botet was diagnosed with Marfan syndrome at a young age, but he made a name for himself in the horror film industry. He can contort his body in such an eerie and unsettling way that this has landed him roles in numerous films, such as Mama, The Conjuring 2, It, and Slender Man. But Marfan syndrome is a spectrum disorder. While some people with the condition can live relatively normal lives, others may face serious health issues. The DEC2 gene mutation is a mutation that allows people to have just a few hours of sleep a night and still feel great. They don't get tired and never sleep in. On average, such people wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. No more than 5% of the world's population has this feature. Human embryos, the initial stage of development for a multicellular organism, have a tail, and it usually disappears before birth, leaving us with a tailbone. In the future, this structure will probably vanish altogether since it has no apparent purpose. People lose 30 to 40,000 skin cells every minute. It adds up to 43 to 57 million skin cells per day. But worry not. The epidermis, the top layer of your skin, replaces itself every 30 days or so. If this process happens faster, it can lead to skin flaking and irritation. The liver is a unique organ. It can regenerate after 60 to 70% is removed. At the same time, its shape may change afterward. It might sound like something out of a comic book, but humans can actually have super strength. Turns out, some accidental mutations can unleash titanic strength without any crazy workout routines. There are two proteins in our body, myostatin and activin A, that usually are secreted by muscle cells to suppress excessive growth. In other words, these two help regulate the size and number of your muscle cells, so you don't end up accidentally looking like Schwarzenegger. But as you can guess, some do end up like that. People with this genetic condition don't produce these proteins. Without hitting the gym, they can naturally grow their muscles extraordinarily large, resulting in super strength. It's called myostatin-related muscle hypertrophy. Sounds kinda dangerous, right? And it is. When you become a Superman, there's also the risk of muscle imbalance, heart and joint issues, and other problems. When you swallow, it takes the food from 5 to 8 seconds to travel from the mouth down to the stomach. Your eyes have 3 kinds of cones: red, blue, and green. Thanks to them, you can perceive around 1 million colors. Your hard-working heart will beat around 2.5 to 3 billion times and pump approximately 100 million gallons of blood in your lifetime. Speaking of your skull, it isn't a solid structure. It consists of 22 bones. 8 of them protect the brain and 14 form the facial skeleton. And since we're on the topic of the human head, the part of your brain that's responsible for vision is in the back of your head. Interestingly, the right side of your brain controls the vision on the left side, and vice versa. Breathing isn't only about moving the air inside and outside. It's about the way you do it, because it can literally affect your face shape. If you breathe through your nose, you'll get well-defined cheekbones over time. It will also make your face wider because your tongue will exert force against your jaw. If you breathe through your mouth, your tongue won't have a place to rest. It will change your facial structure as time goes by. Your face can be more narrow and your cheekbones won't be that visible. Also, if you're a mouth breather, you'd probably tend to tilt your head backwards more. This way, you increase cranial contents in the back part of your brain and directly change your entire posture, along with the shape of your neck and face. It's possible to taste your food without saliva. That's because the chemicals in your food must be dissolved in saliva before they get detected by your taste buds. By the way, each of your taste buds works as a mini-computer. It consists of up to 100 cells that analyze taste information. Anyway, speaking of food, eating too many carrots can indeed make your skin orange because of the high amounts of beta-carotene this vegetable contains. If you have too much of this compound in your bloodstream, it'll gather in parts of your body with thicker skin, such as the soles of your feet, knees, elbows, palms, and even certain areas around your nose. But you can easily reverse this condition by eating fewer carrots. The chin muscles, aka the mentalis muscles, look like creepy, tiny tentacles. And still, they make it possible for you to create different facial expressions involving the lips, chin, and cheeks. Your small intestine is actually not so small. It's taller than you are, measuring from 9 to 16 feet. The cornea, that transparent front cover on your eyes, doesn't have any blood supply. It receives oxygen directly from the air. Our lungs are the only organs that can float on the water. All because they're made up of around 300 million balloon-like structures called alveoli. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. The outer layer of your skin is thicker on your feet than on other parts of your body. The heart has its own electrical system and can continue beating even when it's disconnected from the body. The average lifespan of one eyebrow hair is 4 months. We spend 40% of our life with our eyes closed. Most of that time is when we're sleeping, but don't forget to count blinking too, or while driving. In an adult, the blood makes up 7 to 8% of the total body weight. About 55% of your blood is liquid plasma. The rest is red and white blood cells and platelets. they form clots and prevent bleeding. The density of your brain increases throughout your whole life, all because new neural connections pop up. And they appear because the structure of your brain keeps changing too. The same process of changing will occur to your feet too. They're likely to become bigger with time. When people grow older, ligaments and tendons in their feet weaken. This makes the arches flatter and feet become wider and longer. People who live to be 110 years and older have more immune cells, called T helpers, than the average person. These cells are likely to protect them from viruses and other health problems. The human brain is sometimes called a random thought generator for a reason. More than 48 thoughts appear in your brain in just 1 minute. It's almost 3,000 thoughts per hour and 69,000 per day. You know these before and after makeovers? Well, if you saw a pic of an average human who lived about 1 million years ago, compare it to a pic of an average human who lives today, you'd be astonished. And get this, it's a makeover performed by Mother Nature. Like back in the day, the earliest human species were basically tiny with long arms and short legs. They needed a big digestive tract to handle all those plants they were chowing down on, and their rib cages were super wide to make room for all the organs breaking down their food. Time went by and some of these humans started adapting to hot climates, and they all got narrow and leggy to stay cool. They started eating meat and other quick-to-digest foods, which meant they could have smaller digestive tracts and use more energy for their tall bodies and big brains. And when humans spread to colder climates, they evolved short, wide bodies to conserve heat. But they still love their raw meat and cooked food, which could be easily processed in a short digestive tract. Check out this skeleton of an 8 to 9-year-old Homo erectus kid from East Africa. He was already 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighed 106 pounds. If he had grown up, he could have been almost 6 feet tall. His lean body was perfect for hot, dry environments. And then there were the Neanderthals, who were only about 5 foot 4 inches tall on average. They had short, broad bodies that were great for dealing with winter cold and even ice ages. Speaking of the brain, it can decide what sounds to focus on when you're in a loud place. Thanks to this ability, you can shut out all other voices and concentrate on the person you're listening to. In most cases, hiccups are harmless and resolve by themselves within a couple of minutes. But if you want to avoid this condition, you should know that it might occur because of temperature changes. There's a bond between your digestive system and your brain, the gut-brain axis. This is the main reason why stress or brain issues can affect the way your body digests food. These days, humans have softer diets and, consequently, smaller jaws. That's why wisdom teeth aren't really necessary, and around 20% of people don't have all 4 of them. The vomeronasal organ helps some animals detect pheromones. Some have vestigial VNO too, but it's mostly non-functional and is likely to disappear with time. You flex that strong handshake and think it's all because of your gym grind? Ha! Turns out your pinky finger is the real MVP. No joke. Believe it or not, that little finger packs a punch and is responsible for 50% of your hand strength. Who knew the underdog could be such a powerhouse? Your toes are like 2 little homies that carry almost half of your body weight. And don't even listen to people who say you don't need them. Your toes are the most important guys when it comes to walking and pushing you forward. Our hair color is easily explained by genes. There are not more than 2% of people with natural red hair. They're followed by blondes, about 3%, and by all the varieties of brown shades, only about 11%. The vast majority goes to black hair, including very dark brown. Who knew that nails had a secret talent besides helping us pick up tiny objects and peel off stickers? They also give us a structure to press against so we know how firmly to hold anything. Talk about multi-talented. Move over, Rapunzel. It's not just our hair and nails that can grow. Our liver can regenerate itself from just 51% of its original size back to full size. But don't go damaging it too much, or you'll end up with scars. In the future, people are likely to change due to extensive use of technology. So we might have text claws, cramping from gadget use, and 90-angle elbows from holding our devices. Besides, there's a theory that humans are likely to get smaller to conserve energy in our increasingly crowded world. Your body maintains a very careful water balance, and if it loses just 1% of water, you start feeling thirsty. Your brain can process up to 1,000 words per minute while you're reading. Rapid eye movements, saccades, help us absorb information more quickly. As for your tongue, together with your lips and teeth, it allows you to say more than 90 words per minute using over 20 various movements. Your body constantly converts food into energy. 1 calorie is equal to around 4,200 joules. And that's how much you need to change the temperature of 2.2 pounds of water by 1 Kelvin. People have as many hairs on their bodies as chimpanzees. The only difference is that human body hair is mostly useless and so fine that it's almost impossible to see. Who would have thought that tomatoes have more genes than humans? But don't worry, it's not the number of genes that matters. It's how they all work together. So go ahead and enjoy that tomato sauce on your pizza. Hold your nose the next time you eat and see how much your taste buds fade. It turns out that the nose is actually responsible for 75 to 95% of our taste perception. So don't underestimate the power of those sniffers. Keep your mouth hydrated or your taste buds won't work properly. Saliva triggers chemical reactions with enzymes that break down the food as soon as it enters your mouth. So drink up and savor those flavors. Forget about distinguishing between 10,000 smells. Recent research shows that we can actually differentiate between over 1 trillion smells. And not only that, but smells can evoke some distant memories too. So next time you catch a whiff of something familiar, take a moment to reminisce. When you're snoozing away, your sense of smell goes on vacation too. So even if your room smells like a dumpster fire, you won't even notice it. Sweet dreams, right? And speaking of dreams, did you ever wonder why some of them are in black and white, while others are like a rainbow explosion? Well, apparently it all depends on the TV you watched as a kid. So I guess your grandparents had some pretty boring dreams, huh? Chromesthesia is seeing colors when you're listening to music. It's a kind of synesthesia, a phenomenon when people have several senses mixed. Some of them perceive numbers in different colors. Others can taste words. People have more than 5 basic senses. Don't forget about the sense of space, the sense of pain, the sense of balance and time, the sense of temperature around and in the body, and many others. Your teeth are the only part of your body that can't repair itself, but the enamel which covers them is one of the toughest things in the human body. After growing several human taste cells in the lab, scientists found out that they had an ability to smell. In each of them, there were a few molecules similar to the ones found in the cells in your nose. Apparently, our senses of smell and taste are even more connected than we thought before. Now let's talk about listening to your heart. Not only is it a great metaphor for following your dreams, but it can also give you away if you're lying. Yeah, your heart rate starts racing like Usain Bolt when you're fibbing. Okay, brace yourself for this one. Even if you brush your teeth like a champ and use mouthwash like it's going out of style, your mouth is still a germ hotspot. Gross, right? But don't worry, most of those bacteria are actually good for us and keep the bad stuff away. But wait, there's more. The belly button is actually the second dirtiest place on our bodies. Yeah, I know, who knew? Since we don't really use it after we're born, it becomes a breeding ground for all kinds of icky stuff. It's got over 2,300 bacterial species living in there. So maybe it's time to give our belly button some extra TLC.
So check this out. There are people who can bend down their pinky without bending the ring finger. But most find it hard or even impossible to do. When they move their middle or little finger, they tend to slightly bend their ring finger too. Yup, me too. Globluxation is an extremely rare condition when people can make their eyes protrude out of their sockets. Unfortunately, this ability comes with downsides. It can cause numerous eye issues. Some indigenous groups of people, like Tibetans, can survive at altitudes as high as Mount Everest. This rare ability most likely appeared after years of evolution. The ancestors of modern Tibetans lived in high regions for thousands of years and developed red blood cell adaptations, making it possible to survive with dangerously low levels of oxygen. The Bajau are sea nomads living in Southeast Asia. These people have evolved an extra-large spleen, serving as a repository of oxygen-rich blood cells. Thanks to that, they can easily spend 5 to 10 minutes fishing underwater without coming up for air even once. Now, about 14% of the population don't have a palmaris longus muscle. It's actually a rudimentary part of the body, and the need for it disappeared in the process of evolution. So, if you don't have this muscle, worry not. Its absence doesn't affect the work of your forearm anyway. About 5 to 37% of people don't have wisdom teeth from birth. These teeth are not really needed anymore. They were important for our ancestors since they helped to chew hard food like nuts, roots, and meat, and saltwater taffy. I made that up. But since most of the food we eat today is processed, wisdom teeth are now a mere atavism. Most people have just one clockwise hair whorl, but 5 out of 100 people have a double crown. And if both whorls are directed counterclockwise, this makes a person even more unique. Some scientists think there's a genetic link between hair whorl direction and handedness. A bit more than 8% of right-handed people have counterclockwise hair whorls, but in the left-handed, this number grows up to 45%. A man's brain gets older faster than a woman's. As men age, they start complaining about memory problems and lack of concentration more and more often. At the same time, women don't have such acute problems with memory, but they feel depressed more often. Which one would you choose? Now, when someone is lying, their own nose gives them away. Psychologists from the University of Granada have discovered that when a person tells a lie, the temperature around their nose and in the inner corners of their eyes goes up. This phenomenon got the name of, wait for it, the Pinocchio effect. Japanese people have particular bacteria in their intestines. These bacteria help them to digest sushi. The Japanese have been eating raw seaweed for centuries. Microorganisms dwelling on the surface of the seaweed got into their bodies and actively developed. Nowadays, the bacteria help Japanese people digest raw food and prevent different problems connected with food. So, people have as many hairs on their bodies as chimpanzees. The hair count of a person and a chimp is approximately the same. The only difference is that human body hair is mostly useless and so fine that it's almost impossible to see. Humans don't have more genes than other species. In fact, people have fewer genes than a worm. Tomatoes also have many more genes than you do. But we are such complicated creatures. Well, recently, scientists have concluded that the number of genes that a genome contains isn't closely connected with the complexity of a living being. Let's take a breather. Speaking of which, your left lung consists of 2 lobes, while your right lung is divided into 3 parts. Plus, the lung on the left is a bit smaller since it has to make room for your heart. Your lungs also contain around 1,500 miles of airways. It's more than half the distance between New York and Los Angeles. There are also more than 300 million alveoli, which are tiny balloon-shaped air sacs in your lungs. People have 5 most obvious senses: vision, smell, touch, hearing, and taste. But that's not all. How about thermoception, the sense of heat? Or nociception, the perception of pain? Or your body awareness, proprioception? To figure out what it is, close your eyes and touch your nose. Got it? That's proprioception in action. This list can be much longer. Some experts state people have from 21 to 53 senses. So your fingers get all wrinkly after you spend too much time in the water. Pruny fingers are caused by the narrowing of your blood vessels. When you stay in the water for a long time, your nervous system makes your blood vessels shrink. Your body sends the blood away from that area, and this loss of blood makes your vessels thinner. The skin starts folding over them, forming those funny wrinkles. Scientists think this process helps us have a better grip when our hands and feet are wet. There are 3 kinds of cone cells in the average person's eyes. These cones help to recognize the colors in the blue, red, and green spectrums. Thanks to them, most people can distinguish around 1 million different shades. But those with tetrachromacy have 4 cones in their eyes. This feature allows them to see up to 100 million different hues. This vision anomaly is extremely rare and is much more common in women than in men. Interestingly, most people with tetrachromacy don't even realize they see the world brighter than others. Now, not all people have round pupils. 2 people out of every 10,000 have unusually shaped pupils. Most commonly, they resemble keyholes. This eye disorder is called coloboma. Interestingly, some people with this condition don't have any problems with their vision. Only 3 to 22% of people in the world have Morton's toe. It's a foot structure where the second toe is longer than the first one. Michelangelo's David and the Statue of Liberty both have this unusual body feature. Hey, toes up! In some people, saliva accumulates in a gland under their tongue. It can then get propelled out in a stream when a person presses on this gland. If the mouth is open at the moment, a jet can reach several feet. This process, called gleeking, can occur spontaneously. A person accidentally pushes their tongue against the gland while eating, yawning, talking, or cleaning their teeth, and voila! Up to 35% of people can gleek, but just 1% can do it on command. I had a friend in college who did that. Yeah, it was weird. About 18 to 35% of people have an interesting reaction to sunlight. They sneeze. This phenomenon has its own name, the photic sneeze reflex. In the Greek language, it's called sun sneezing. Achoo! Just like salamanders regrow their tails, humans might be able to regenerate cartilage. That's the rubber-like stuff around your joints. Recently, scientists have discovered that cartilage might be able to repair itself, most effectively at the ankle, not that well in the knee, and least effectively in the hip. The human brain is 73% water, just like your heart. That's why if your brain loses even 2% of liquid, you start feeling exhausted. This also makes your memory get worse, shortens your attention span, and puts a damper on your mood. So drink up! Your brain is constantly processing tons of visual information, around 600 million bits per minute. It all starts when the light goes through the cornea, your eye's clear protective outer layer. Then the light turns into electrical signals. They travel to your brain and it interprets them into the images you see. It takes milliseconds for this complicated process to happen. People who live to be 110 years and older, called supercentenarians, may have a secret. Researchers have discovered that their immune cells, called T helpers, might change and adapt to the late stages of aging. These cells are likely to protect them from viruses and other health problems. We've become impressive multitaskers thanks to technology, or rather, it only seems so. The human brain can't concentrate on 2 things at once. What it can do is to switch between several tasks really fast, but it makes your attention span shorter and harms your short-term memory and the ability to learn. So put that phone down. The human body is this perfectly balanced machine, right? Well, not when I'm using it. Normally, all its parts work seamlessly together to keep us thriving and, well, alive. Each of our organs is essential for our day-to-day activities, from breathing, walking, talking, and coming up with bright ideas that push humanity forward. But are they really essential? Do we really need all those body parts? Or are some of them just ancient relics that we just got stuck with in this weird game of evolution? Take wisdom teeth, for example. Nah, somebody already took mine. Yeah, they're those pairs of teeth stuck in the back of your mouth you often have to go to the dentist for. They're also known as third molars, and while they can be used to chew food, a lot of people think they're just unnecessary. And get this, around 22% of people worldwide don't even have all 4 of them. When they do grow in, they're the most likely to become impacted, which means they get stuck in the jawbone sideways and can't properly come through the gums. It's all because our jaws are often too small to accommodate these extra guys. Some smart scientists think that's because we've evolved to have smaller jaws over time. Recent evidence also shows that what we eat as kids might also be to blame, but it's hard to know for sure. Apparently, munching on hard-to-chew foods like raw veggies and nuts can actually stimulate jaw growth, while eating soft processed foods can kinda stunt it. And that leaves little space for our back teeth to come in and, do their thing. Will they disappear altogether in the future? I guess we human mammals will just have to wait and see. Now let's talk about the vomeral nasal organ, or as I like to call it, the nose's secret instrument. Ooh. You see, rodents and other mammals have this awesome ability to communicate with each other using chemical signals called pheromones. And guess what? They have a special organ called the vomeral nasal organ, or VNO, that helps them detect these pheromones. Here's where it gets interesting. While most adult humans have something resembling a VNO in their nose, it turns out that it's basically a useless remnant. Neuroscientists even say that if you look at the anatomy of this organ, you won't see any cells that resemble those of similar organs from other mammals. Also, this organ in humans doesn't seem to be communicating with the brain either. Now, it's not all bad news. Even though the human VNO is pretty useless, it looks like it still might respond to some pheromones. Will humans keep this organ on their evolutionary to-do list? For now, I'd place it in the maybe pile. Now, here's a tail. Animals that feature tails need these structures for a lot of things. Some need it for balance, others for navigation, while some need it to attract potential partners. But did you know that when we're just a few weeks old in our mother's belly, we actually have tails too? That's right, we have a whole little tail complete with vertebrae. As we develop, that tail magically disappears and we're left with our trusty tailbone. Humans and apes are unique in that we don't have tails, unlike other primates. It's a mystery why apes lost their tails, but we can all agree that it makes us stand out in a crowd. However, once in a blue moon, a human is born with a little vestigial tail. Cute, right? Well, don't get too excited, because these tails don't have vertebrae and can sometimes be associated with a tricky condition of the spine. Either way, these tails are usually harmless and can be easily removed with a quick surgery. And let's be honest, it's not like we're going to miss it. After all, who needs a tail when you have arms and legs to get around? Plus, can you imagine trying to find pants that fit with a tail sticking out the back? Not a good look. There's little to no chance humans will end up needing tails in the future, so I'm guessing the tailbones are bye-bye in future generations. Humans also have a funny little fold of membrane in the inner corner of the eyes, called the plica semilunaris. It's basically what's left of a third eyelid, which is still found in some animals, like gorillas and other primates. But here's the funny thing. Even our close relatives, the chimpanzees, have this little fold that appears to be useless too. So we're not alone in this eye quirkiness. Speaking of unusual membranes, they serve a variety of functions in different animals, such as protecting the eye from dirt and moisture, or hiding the iris from predators. Some species can even see through their transparent membranes when they're underwater or underground. Now, the reasons why we humans lost our third eyelid is still a bit of a mystery. Maybe changes in our habitat and eye physiology made it unnecessary, or maybe we just evolved to be too cool for a third eyelid. Who knows? With or without vestigial organs, it's interesting to imagine what humans might look like in the future. Many organs have become obsolete because of our lifestyle changes. Care to have a peek into what we might look like in the future? And in the same vein, or artery, have you heard of the concept of text claw? It's where you spend so much time typing on your phone or laptop that your hand starts to cramp up like a claw. And that's just one of the physical changes that could happen to us if we don't take care of our bodies in this tech-heavy world. But it's not just our hands that are affected. We could end up with 90-degree elbows from constantly holding our devices at that angle, and even a smaller brain from all the distractions and information overload. Now, I know what you're thinking. We just can't give up technology and go back to the Stone Age. And you're right, we don't have to. But we do need to be aware of the potential negative effects and take steps to reduce their damage. That's why a team of designers put their creative efforts together to present Mindy, A future human whose body has physically changed due to the constant and never-ending use of smartphones, laptops, and other types of maniacal devices. While Mindy's exaggerated changes may not be in our future, the concerns behind them are real. So, what can we do? Well, one suggestion is to take regular breaks from our screens and stretch our legs a little. Maybe even encourage some office yoga or dance parties to get the blood flowing. We don't have to give up technology completely, but we do need to be mindful of its effects on our bodies and minds. Many years in the future, we might even get smaller in size. One scientist reckons that if we were smaller, our bodies would need less energy, which would come in super handy in our increasingly crowded planet. It's funny to think about how different our lives are now compared to when we were hunter-gatherers. Back then, we only had to interact with a handful of people each day. But now, remembering people's names is a super important trait, and it might even be something we grow to become better at. Or, technology might actually play a role in our evolution. Scientists believe that we could one day have implants in our brains that help us remember people's names. It's like having a biological phone book directly in your body. Wouldn't that be cool? Who knows? Maybe in the future, we'll even have visible technology as part of our appearance. Imagine having an artificial eye that can see different colors and visuals. And don't even get me started on what we might look like if we colonize Mars. With the lower gravity, our bodies could change in all sorts of ways. We might have longer arms and legs, or even insulating body hair like our Neanderthal ancestors. It's hard to pinpoint what we might look like in the future without very precise data to back the models up. But it's fair to say these changes will be interesting, to say the least. As for me, well, it's too late to say the least. I've said over 1,400 words here already. You know what? In 10 years from now, you'll be a completely different person. Well, at least your skeleton will be. To reach its adult size, your skeleton went through a process called modeling, which means the development of growth and formation. Turns out it regenerates completely once every 10 years or so. This entire process ensures you always have healthy bone cells, which can support you and provide calcium to your body. And speaking of ways the body regenerates, every second you make 25 million new cells. I'll do the math for you. Okay, that means in about 15 seconds, you'll have made more cells than there are people in the United States. Think about that the next time you feel you haven't been productive enough. Some animals have eyes that need to adapt to hot climates, like camels, for example. Their eyes feature a third eyelid, but these sweep across from the corner of each eye. Because their environment is filled with small particles, they need to clean their eyes more frequently than other species. Now, see that little pink thing in the corner of your eye? It's also a third eyelid. Well, a vestige at least. In humans, the third eyelid is unnecessary because it no longer serves its original purpose. Next time you're tuning into your favorite song, try to pay some attention to your heartbeat. If you listen closely, you'll notice that sometimes your heartbeat may synchronize with the rhythm of the song. Now, not all genres of music have this special ability, but some tunes trigger the release of dopamine, or the happy hormone. This effect may give you a lower heart rate, breathing rate, and blood pressure. And speaking of that healthy ticker of yours, just in case you're wondering, it beats on average about 75 times per minute. This means each year, a human heart can pump enough blood to fill an Olympic-sized pool, if that were a thing. What's even more fascinating is that if you were to connect all your blood vessels end to end, it would be able to circle the Earth 2.5 times. But that's not good for your own health, so don't do that. Your heart can also continue to beat even if it's removed from the body. That's because it has its own internal battery, which allows it to beat as long as it receives oxygen. If you regularly have your nails done at a salon, you've probably noticed you need more appointments for your fingers than your toes. That's because fingernails do grow faster. The definitive scientific answer is still up for debate, but many specialists think it's because fingernails used to be claws, somewhere back in our ancient history. These days, they're flatter and have widened a bit, And it all happened when primates started using tools in their day-to-day lives, like stones and branches, so there was less use for claws. Once they got flatter, it meant nails wouldn't have gotten in the way if primates wanted to use the palms of their hands. As for why fingernails grow faster than toenails, the short answer may be the fact that we use our hands more than your feet. As such, our fingernails are more exposed, and we may have evolved to grow them faster. The more you use a certain part of your body, the more it becomes exposed to damage. So for me, I'm in danger of my mouth falling off. Oh boy. Getting back to our hands, it's about time we give a nice shout out to our humble pinkies. We don't see them as being really that important, since we don't use them for holding objects, eating, or writing. But recent studies have shown that losing the pinky on our dominant hands would have a devastating effect. Specialists haven't gathered enough data to supply specific numbers, but from what they've learned so far, losing our pinky would weaken our grip strength considerably, even if it's the lesser used finger. Adding the ring finger to that, and the effect would be worse for our grip strength. Another recent study done in the UK has shown that only about 40% of people are happy with how their nose looks. Regardless of how you feel about it, the human nose is a real-life superhero. That's because it acts as a heater, filter, and humidifier all at once. Inside each nostril, there are small, shelf-like bones that feature blood vessels. They heat the air up before it reaches other parts of our respiratory system. The mucus that's inside there handles making the air more humid. As for the filtering part, that's why we have nose hairs. Small particles get stuck on these small hairs, which helps prevent pollen, spores, viruses, or bacteria from reaching our lungs. Now, when watching cartoons, we're led to believe that the sound our heart makes is because it's touching its environment while beating. Well, it turns out that sound is actually made by the opening and closing of the heart valves. They're like small doors inside our hearts that open and close to pump blood correctly from one side of the heart to the other. For our bodies to work, blood needs to move at the right time and in the right direction, or else. Now let's talk teeth. Throughout your entire life, you'll probably spend up to 40 days total just brushing your teeth. And in case you're still wondering, teeth are not in fact bones, even though they do have a lot in common. One of the primary differences between bones and teeth is that our bones can regenerate. They are living tissue. Our teeth are not, and they remain permanently damaged once broken. Now here's another shocker. We are the only species on this planet to have a chin. There's still some debate about this subject in the scientific community, but one of the reasons why seems to be to make our jaws stronger. As humans have continued to evolve, their teeth and the muscles in their jaws got smaller and smaller, so they needed something to help with increased jaw resistance. Now, most of us have developed some specific traits depending on the area of the globe in which we live. But there is a group of people, specifically those who live in higher altitudes, that develop some pretty cool traits. That's because high-altitude environments come with less oxygen. Not only do these people survive in these locations, but they've adapted so well that they actually thrive. In the Andes Mountains of South America, people have evolved red blood cells that can carry much more oxygen. It makes their overall circulatory system much more efficient. People living in Tibet have to endure similar conditions, but surprisingly, they have adapted differently. In Tibet, they can take more breaths so that they can properly oxygenate their bodies. You've probably heard the myth about dreams only lasting a couple of seconds in reality. Turns out that yes, some of them do, but not all dreams are the same. There are a lot of things we don't understand yet about how we dream. What we do know is that they mainly happen during the rapid eye movement or REM stage of sleep. During this time, your brain is more active, about as active as it is when you're awake. And it's named REM because during the sleep stage, your eyes tend to move a lot. Dreams can happen during the other stages of sleep too, but you're less likely to remember them. As for the length of each dream, they can go from a few seconds to even 20 to 30 minutes. Also, you're more likely to remember a dream if you've woken during the REM stage. Most people have 3 to 5 dreams per night, but some people can have up to 7. I know, seems unlikely, but remember, you immediately forget most of what you dream. Just like we have unique fingerprints, we also develop unique tongue prints. Research has shown that those approximately 10,000 taste buds on our tongues are laid out in a one-of-a-kind pattern. Truth is, about 80% of what you believe is taste is actually smell. That combination of taste and smell that we perceive is what we come to know as flavor. That's probably because our sense of smell is around 10,000 times more sensitive than our sense of taste. Our mouths have also another cool superpower called mouthfeel. With the help of the somatosensory system, it allows us to sense the texture of our food. The system is activated by physical touches, such as pressure, touch, or vibrations. It's even sensitive to pain and temperature. We also use our tongues to identify the size, form, and texture of food, which is crucial for proper chewing and digestion. Hey, tongues are also good for wagging, sticking out at certain people, and trumpet playing.
The human tongue consists of 8 intertwined muscles. The whole structure resembles an elephant's trunk or an octopus tentacle. Just like them, the tongue is very flexible and can move in any directions. People who live to be 110 years and older, also called supercentenarians, may have a secret. Researchers have discovered they have more immune cells called T helpers than the average person. These cells are likely to protect some people from some health problems. Scientists have always thought that the human brain is a sterile place, free of germs or bacteria. But the latest studies have shown that experts might have been wrong all along. It seems there are harmless microbes living in our brains, but researchers need a bit more time to make sure. Researchers believe that if people suddenly started to be born with 6 fingers, the brain would easily adapt to it. Those with polydactyly, extra fingers or toes, usually don't have any problems with this feature. Their brains know how to control additional fingers and how to use each of them independently. Such people sometimes need only one hand to carry out a task, for which others would need 2 hands. In some people, saliva accumulates in a gland under their tongue. It can then get propelled out in a stream when a person presses on this gland. If the mouth is open at the moment, a jet can reach several feet. This process, called gleeking, can occur spontaneously. A person accidentally pushes their tongue against the gland while eating, yawning, talking, or cleaning their teeth, and voila! Up to 35% of people can gleek, but just 1% can do it on command. About 25% of people have an interesting reaction to sunlight, I mean sneezing. This phenomenon has its own name, the photic sneeze reflex. In the Greek language, it's called sun sneezing. Just like salamanders regrow their tails, humans might be able to regenerate cartilage, that's rubber-like stuff around your joints. Scientists have discovered that cartilage is likely to repair itself, most effectively at the ankle, not that well in the knee, and least effectively in the hip. The older you get, the fewer bones you have. When people are born, they have many more than 206 bones. In babies, most bones look different than they do in grown-ups, and there are more than 300 of them. Where do those extra ones go? They sure do not disappear or dissolve. They fuse together as they develop. Until they merge, some bones contain neither collagen nor calcium, what we think is standard bone material. No, they start as flexible yet tough cartilage. Later, the cartilage turns into sturdier bones, and some of the pieces come together. For example, the skull initially consists of 44 different elements. But a grown-up skull is made up of 22 bones. Some bones don't fully form till our early to mid-20s. When someone's lying, their own nose gives them away. Psychologists from the University of Granada discovered that when a person told a lie, the temperature around their nose and the inner corners of the eyes went up. This phenomenon was called the Pinocchio effect. Ancient Greeks had stories about fire-breathing creatures called chimeras. They were a fearsome mixture of a goat, lion, and snake. In real life, chimeras are people who have two different sets of DNA. Scientists have recorded no more than 100 cases of human chimerism. Albinism is a rare feature to have. People with albinism have very little to no melanin, a substance that produces pigmentation. But if it's ocular albinism, that's even more unique. This kind of albinism affects only a person's eyes. Experts don't have exact numbers, but they think between 1 person in 20,000 to 1 person in 50,000 have ocular albinism. Scientists have figured out that you might be good at hearing things thanks to a teeny jello violin. Inside your ear, there is a miniature assembly line of nerves, tissues, fibers, and bones. It turns vibrations into sounds. And there is also a blob of jelly-like substance made up of 97% water. Researchers believe that thanks to this jello, your ear can separate high frequencies from lower ones. Your brain is constantly processing tons of visual information, around 600 million bits per minute. It all starts when the light goes through the cornea, your eye's clear, protective outer layer. After several transformations, the light turns into electrical signals. They travel to your brain, and it interprets them into images you see. It takes milliseconds for this super complicated process to happen. The human brain is 73% water, just like your heart. That's why if your brain loses even 2% of liquid, you start feeling exhausted. This also makes your memory worse, shortens your attention span, and puts a dampener on your mood. Around 65% of the world's population have loop-shaped fingerprints. In 30% of people, fingerprints are whorl-shaped, and only 5% of people have arch-shaped fingerprints. All these types are divided into smaller groups. For example, there might be plain or tented arches, accidental whorls, or the peacock's eye, and so on. If you have a circular hair whorl on your head, it's likely to be clockwise. Some scientists think there is a genetic link between hair whorl direction and handedness. A bit more than 8% of right-handed people have counterclockwise hair whorls, but in the left-handed, this number grows up to 45%. There are more than 650 skeletal muscles in your body. They make up around 40% of your body weight. Up to 85% of the heat your body produces comes from your muscles contracting. At the same time, caterpillars have many more muscles than people. Some species, up to 4,000 of them, and the grasshopper has 900. Your brain can decide what sounds to focus on when you're in a loud place. Thanks to this ability, you can shut out all other voices and concentrate on the person you're listening to. The Bajo is a group of nomadic people that live in the waters around the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Thanks to a rare DNA mutation, they can stay underwater for up to 13 minutes. The Bajo people have evolved spleens that are way larger than average. This feature provides them with a genetic advantage. Sea nomads needed to hunt for fish or look for underwater stuff that can be used in crafts. Human bones might be loaded with a network of tiny tunnels. Scientists knew nothing about them until recently. That's why it was unclear how blood cells, which are produced in our bones, could quickly exit bones and get into the blood circulation. But now the mystery may be finally solved. If there are holes, there can also be capillaries, miniature blood vessels. Some people have more than one row of eyelashes. This phenomenon is a genetic mutation called distichiasis. A person with this condition has a second set of eyelashes growing behind the first. All these thick, lush lashes sure look beautiful, but they can also cause some discomfort. Some hairs can start growing in the wrong direction, or in the place where an oil gland is supposed to be. It can cause irritation and tearing. Why do your fingernails turn blue when you get cold? For one thing, your fingers are rather far away from the rest of your body, just like your toes or the very tip of your nose. Imagine a piece of tissue in the middle of your body. It gets circulation from all sides, left and right, up and down. But the ends of your fingers have just one option. Blood can only flow from the hand down the fingers. When it's cold, little blood vessels, aka capillaries, in your fingers narrow. It prevents blood from flowing as freely as before. When blood circulation slows down, the tips of your fingers and your fingernails don't get enough oxygen-rich blood, and the less oxygen your blood contains, the darker it becomes. Its color is actually dark red, but we perceive it as blue. The hippocampus is a part of your brain that helps you navigate in space. You have two of them, each the size of a chestnut. London cab drivers have bigger hippocampi than most other people. Researchers are sure it's thanks to their regular mental workout. It's not a gimme to navigate 60,000 London streets.
Hey, can you speak up? I just ate an entire pizza. That's because after eating a hearty meal, our hearing tends to be a bit less sharp. During digestion, most of our bloodstream is directed toward the stomach, which takes away a bit from all the other organs. So, next time you want to go listen to your favorite band at a live concert, make sure to eat a lighter meal to keep your ears pitch perfect. On top of our stomach and left kidney, we have a magical organ that can grow back if we remove a part of it. Our liver can regenerate itself by making new cells called hepatocytes. They begin to multiply once the liver is damaged. The seriousness of that damage defines if it can regenerate completely and the amount of time it takes to do so. Ever wondered what's worse for your body? No sleep or no food? Turns out the lack of sleep is more dangerous. That's because if you don't rest, your body becomes exposed to a lot more risks. After 24 hours without any shut-eye, you can start to have memory problems and find it difficult to concentrate. At just 17 hours without sleep, you start to feel tired and groggy, irritable, tense, and more emotional. I need a nap. Your pain receptors also become more sensitive, which means everything hurts a bit more than it should. Oh, and it also affects your hearing too. What? On the other hand, you can be well into your 24-hour period with no food before your body realizes you've stopped eating. In the first 8 hours, you just keep digesting the last meals you had. After those first hours, you start to use stored fats for energy. Not eating for more than 24 hours means that your body will start eating away at its own protein, which means you literally start to lose muscle. Rainwater isn't always safe to drink. It can sometimes hold harmful bacteria and viruses. Also, in heavily polluted locations, it may even meet other harmful materials. Some communities out there do depend solely on rainwater as their primary source of hydration. But does rainwater have any other health benefits? Not really, according to current studies. Some of those risky substances may be removed from rainwater if you boil it, but it's best to stick to the safer side and only drink water from sources that are 100% safe for human consumption. Now, we produce sweat mostly to regulate our body temperature and for some added moisture, like the one we need in the palms of our hands for a better grip. But sweat doesn't just show up on our skin. It comes out of around 5 million pores on our bodies. We're literally stepping on a quarter of our bones each day. We have just over 200 bones in our body, but about a quarter of those are in a very small surprising area, our feet. Since we have 26 bones in each foot, we end up with literally 52 in both. Now, our eyes produce tears for many reasons, like protecting themselves from infection or clearing up debris, such as smoke and dust, or when your baby done you wrong. But the number of tears we produce is quite surprising, up to 30 gallons per year. That's almost enough to fill a bathtub. Wow, that is heartbreaking. Our blood pressure wakes up hours before we do. That's because in the morning, the body produces a bunch of hormones like adrenaline and noradrenaline. They help give us the energy boost we need during our morning hours, but they also increase our blood pressure, which is usually higher between 6 a.m. and noon. During the night, since we should technically sleep and perform no physical activity, our blood pressure drops down by up to 20%. Speaking of our vital fluid, our blood accounts for about 10% of our total body weight. We tend to think of our body weight as being mostly made up of muscles, fat stores, and bones. But there's a lot more to it. In a fit adult person, bones make up 15% of the total body weight. About 40 to 45% is left to muscles, about 15% to fat deposits, and the rest are stuff like skin, tendons, hair, and other yucky things. Let's see. That adds up to, 100%. Your lungs aren't twins, they're siblings. That's because they aren't the same size or shape. Your right lung is bigger and tends to weigh more, and your heart is to blame for it since your ticker tilts to the left a little bit. This creates a small indentation in the left lung called the cardiac impression, which is also what funny heart doctors do at comedy clubs. The right lung may be bigger, but it's a bit shorter since it needs to make room for the liver. Doesn't your house have a liver room? Many of your body measurements are quite symmetrical in surprising ways. If you were to stretch out both of your arms, your wingspan, and measure it, it should show how tall you are. Based on these similar measurements, specialists can even produce theories about what ancient humans used to look like. Looks like we've evolved to be increasingly symmetrical to appear more attractive and healthier to attract mates. More so, since we've evolved to also walk on two legs, our symmetrical features help us to move around with the least amount of energy because it creates balance. Now, humans aren't natural champions when it comes to the scent of smell, that's for sure, but our noses can pick up about 1 trillion different scents. Scientists are still performing research on this subject and believe the number may be even higher. Some dog breeds may be able to notice scents somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 times better than we do, but turns out the best nose in the animal kingdom may be attributed to the elephant because of its staggering number and type of olfactory receptor genes, over 10,000, while humans and chimpanzees have less than 400. We tend to look at our pinkies as our most delicate fingers, but we do have more power in them than we think. Turns out that should our pinky finger be lost or affected, the overall strength of our grip may decrease by up to 33%. The liquid in our stomach, made of hydrochloric acid, potassium chloride, and sodium chloride, is way more powerful than any acidic food you can think of, like lemons, pineapples, or tomatoes. The pH of healthy stomach acid should be between 1 and 3, so if you think about it, it's just below that of battery acid. Our hair strands are strong too, so strong that research is performed on them to duplicate their resistance into human-made materials. A healthy head of hair should be able to withstand up to 26,000 pounds. It's due to a little protein in the hair strand called keratin, which you can also find in your nails and skin. Now, only about 1/3 of us humans have perfect vision. There are a lot more glasses and contacts out there than you'd think, making up about 66%. Apart from different eye conditions, our vision also gets worse with age. When we're born, our heads amount to 1/4 of our total length. By the time we reach 25, our head will only be 1/8 of it. That's because our heads won't change their size a lot as we grow older, as opposed to the rest of our body, mostly when it comes to the legs and torso. Our brains are these super powerful computers, and a single human brain cell can hold 5 times as much information as the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. Maybe you remember that. We've yet to pinpoint the exact amount of data it can support, but in electronic terms, the storage capacity of the brain is around 2,500 terabytes. For comparison, the National Archives of Britain, which keeps over 900 years of history, only takes up 70 terabytes. It's probably the reason our brains need the most amount of oxygen compared to other organs. About 20% of the total oxygen that enters the bloodstream, and that's despite the fact that it makes up only 2% of our body mass. Our normal activities, plus the effect of gravity, make the cartilage in our ankles, knees, hips, back, and neck slowly compress. Once you rest overnight, the cartilage goes back to normal. On average, you are somewhere around 0.4 inches taller in the morning than you are later at night. And that's why they call me Stretch. So Barry is running along the shore of a lake as fast as possible. He knows that if he stops, his life will turn into a nightmare in no time. 1,000 mosquitoes are about to bite him. But what he doesn't know is that he'll be okay after all. So don't be afraid, Barry, and stop. Mosquitoes are slow. They fly at a little more than 1 mile per hour. And you can't run forever. So after a couple of hours of pointless running, Barry stops. He sweats and emits a smell attractive to insects. One little mosquito flies up to him. It buzzes next to his ear, sits on his sweaty neck, and bites. The insect pierces the skin with a special mouth apparatus called a proboscis. The mosquito starts pumping blood through this needle. Its saliva gets into Barry's body and causes an allergic reaction. More precisely, it's Barry's immune system that starts this reaction. It perceives the mosquito's saliva as an enemy and sends a unique chemical substance to the bite site. The fight between this substance and the invader causes an allergic reaction, redness, swelling, and the worst thing, itching. Barry can scratch himself for several hours or even days. It all depends on how his body will react to the bite. The mosquito fills up with Barry's blood and flies away. It does it not for pleasure, but because it needs to lay eggs. Protein in the blood is necessary for these insects to reproduce. Their eggs can't grow without this substance. Yeah, almost all biting mosquitoes are female. Male mosquitoes prefer plant and flower nectar. Hey, they're guys. So the female mosquito flies away from Barry. She sits down on the shore of the lake where a large mosquito base is located. Here, these insects lay eggs, drink water, and chill in the sun. There are several 100,000 of them, and they're all hungry. The female mosquito brings with her the smell of Barry's sweat, which is attractive to the rest of the mosquitoes, too. There are about 3,500 species of these insects on Earth. Some of them love the smell of sugar, perfume, or deodorant, and some enjoy the smell of dirty feet. Now, your attractiveness to mosquitoes also depends on what you have eaten today. Lots of candies and chocolate? Great! Now, mosquitoes feel a faint sweet smell coming from you. Have you eaten garlic and onions? Mosquitoes probably won't want to deal with you. And not only they, most likely. So, the smell of Barry's sweat is perfect for all mosquitoes on the shore. They go mad, take off, and head for the poor guy. If you walk near the water when the evening comes, if you're sweaty, wearing black clothes, and have O-type blood, then you have all the chances to get bitten by mosquitoes. And Barry meets all the criteria. The first mosquitoes land on Barry's feet. They bite him and start pumping blood. One tiny mosquito can draw a droplet of blood the size of half a grain of rice. It's nothing at all. But several dozen of these bites? It's bad. Barry fights mosquitoes off with his hands, but the insects keep coming. They can't miss such a delicious dinner. 10, 20, 50, 100 mosquitoes. They cover Barry's legs. The skin swells and turns red. Barry feels a burning sensation. His immune system is working at 100%, trying to reduce the damage and drive the enemies away. But the more actively Barry's body defenses work, the worse he feels. Mosquitoes sit on his hands and on his wet t-shirt stuck to his body. Yes, their mouthpiece can pierce a thin layer of fabric. Barry tries to run away. He stumbles over a rock and falls. Some insects finish their feast and fly away to tell their friends about the free food. Mosquitoes from all over the lake come to try Barry. 200 mosquitoes are drinking his blood. 3, 5, 7, 900. Now 1,000 mosquitoes have bitten him. Together they have pumped out a small glass of blood. But the worst thing is they continue biting him. Nothing can stop them now, even though they were supposed to bite him only 1,000 times. Well, the only chance to escape is water. Barry, ignoring the itch, gets up and runs to the shore of the lake. Meanwhile, 100,000 mosquitoes have already bitten him. Sorry, Barry, but we have to entertain the audience. Don't worry, your recovery will be fast. He's getting closer and closer to the water. Mosquitoes are flying in front of his face, so he can't see the road. But Barry keeps running, waving his hands. Meanwhile, You know this moment when you're sleeping and one mosquito flies into the room through the window? Just one. But its squeaky sound is so annoying. And now, imagine 1,000,000 mosquitoes making this noise. It's like a saxophone playing high notes. Sorry if you're a sax player. Well, Barry is slowing down. He's exhausted, and his heart is beating too fast. He no longer feels bites and itches. His body is becoming weak, but he's still moving toward the lake. Mosquitoes have already taken 3 soda cans of blood from him, and this is serious. Barry is running a fever and has clouded consciousness. His immune system is not coping. Barry can't run anymore. He's struggling to walk. It's getting harder to make every next step. The shore is only a few feet away, but it doesn't matter anymore since he has no energy to move. So he just sits on the grass and accepts the situation. He's lost a large soda bottle of blood, and this is a lot. This is probably the most large-scale attack of mosquitoes on humans. And then, at the very last moment, salvation appears. A frog croaks nearby, and another one. Several dozen jumping animals are approaching the shore. They release their tongues like spears and catch mosquitoes. This gives Barry hope. He makes a last-ditch effort to reach the lake. He jumps in. Yeah! What a relief! Cold, fresh water envelops his whole body and relieves the itching and irritation from the bites. He waits in the water while the frogs dine on the mosquitoes. The remaining insects fly away. Barry crawls out of the lake. He sees frogs catching mosquitoes and realizes that these annoying insects are necessary for our planet. Frogs live thanks to these tiny monsters. And besides frogs, there are many other animals that feed on mosquitoes. Lizards, spiders, bats, birds, turtles, it's a huge list. Mosquitoes are an endless source of food for them. One pair can lay 200 eggs. They grow fast and their lives are short. But if all these insects disappear, an ecological catastrophe may begin. Entire animal species may vanish from the face of the earth. The frogs that saved Barry wouldn't exist. Without frogs, the population of other insects, like flies, would begin to grow. They would reproduce uncontrollably. And then, like falling dominoes, other problems will follow. So, Barry, don't be angry at mosquitoes. It's just nature. You better deal with your itchy problem. His whole body is red, covered with little bumps. He starts scratching himself, but this doesn't help. He only makes it worse. As long as mosquito saliva remains in his body and the immune system fights it, Barry will feel this itch. Fortunately, there are many oils and ointments to alleviate these effects. But the best way to get rid of the problem is to ignore it. Barry just needs to distract himself with something. Then the urge to scratch will disappear. Barry has survived so many mosquito bites without harmful consequences. But some people have problems dealing with just one. It depends on whether a person has allergies. Some have a small itchy bump, and others have severe inflammation. As for Barry, wasn't he swell? Didn't he swell? Okay, I'll stop. The best way to protect yourself is to use insect spray. Now, Barry sprays himself with this substance before every run and feels safe. But let's have a look at another situation. What if Barry gets attacked by huge dogs? Hey, just kidding. Relax, Barry. Now, nobody really knows why we need the appendix, but it's always at the back of the book. Wait, wrong appendix. Some researchers claim the human appendix helped our ancestors process the tree bark and whatever they were eating at that time. As we have a way more balanced diet now, the appendix can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. Another purposeless thing in our bodies is the wisdom teeth. Yeah, they used to come in handy when dentists didn't exist, but now we can ideally make do without them. Your brain will grow by roughly 2% if you venture into space. Under normal gravity, it's thought that fluid in the brain naturally moves downwards when we stand upright. But there is evidence that microgravity prevents this, resulting in fluid accumulation in the brain and skull. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at age 30, and it starts shrinking at 40. It happens to everyone, so you just have to go with it and keep your brain busy and nimble. If you stare into your eyes in the mirror, you'll see a small pink circle settled in the corner of your eye. This is your third eyelid, useless for us but valuable for animals, like birds, to keep dust and scattered debris from getting into their eyes. This might sound familiar to you if you've heard of natural selection. In short, natural selection keeps body parts throughout generations, but some of them are harmful, so they're phased out in the next generation, and others that aren't staying, just like the third eyelid. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. It works vice versa too. When you rest at night, your bones kind of relax too, so you wake up taller than when you went to bed last night. Our ears help us keep the balance, so hearing isn't their only duty. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny sensors that look somewhat like hairs, helping you keep your balance. As for hairs, only a few body parts aren't covered with them. These are palms, the soles of the feet, and lips. Hairs grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Mine does a great job. And not only lint, our belly buttons have an entire animal encyclopedia in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can also be found in soil in Japan, and even some bacteria typical for polar ice caps. See, you have a whole naval expedition going on and didn't even know it. Only about 43% of you is you. You're over 50% tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut and other body parts without ever leaving it. Still, even though your cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. With this in mind, your genes are less than half of what you consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, it'll be anywhere from 2 to 20 million genes and their combinations. If you sleep, and I recommend that you do, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take time. One thing that indeed rests while you're sleeping is your nose. You won't smell anything nasty in your sleep. The thing is that your sense of smell deactivates at night. If there's some terrible smell in your bedroom, you won't even be bothered. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish around 10,000 smells. Nope. Recent research showed that people could indicate more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and odors can even evoke some distant memories. Meanwhile, our strongest and most emotional memories are usually fake. It's the way the central memory works. It gives us the confidence to believe everything we remember is real, even though we should be confident about fewer details. Now, you don't mind if I call you a mammal, do you? Well, among us mammals, only humans can always walk on 2 hind limbs and keep that posture for their entire lives. You may want to say that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a third leg, and gorillas use the help of their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mainly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. And vice versa, when there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live, but we can adapt to new conditions even within our lifespan. For example, if you move from the plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you drive from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will change pigmentation slightly to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. If we find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. But we'd be a huge mass of wrinkles by then. Body fat acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might as well protect those organs from serious damage. Your skull isn't a single bone. It consists of 22 different bones, many of which are fused to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that's only attached to your head with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. And the smallest bone in your whole body is inside your ear. It's called the stapes, and it's no larger than a grain of rice. Some of the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs, they're in your head. The masseter is the primary muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you to chew your food. We've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelids opening. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. So, when the reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within less than 1/10 of a second. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. Your stomach has an impressive capacity, holding up to 1/2 gallon of liquids, a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can squeeze into your stomach, since the food is processed with your teeth before it gets down there. There's not enough room for a whole turkey, but who knows, probably a good-sized chicken might fit it. And hey, like my grandmother said, there's always room for ice cream. Now, show me where your stomach with all that cola, chicken, and ice cream is. If you're pointing at your tummy, nope, it's up there, hidden in between your ribs. Your tummy is full of intestines.
Most people are sure that humans only have 5 senses, but that's not entirely true. Taste, touch, smell, sight, and hearing aren't the only ones we have. Scientists claim that people have between 9 and 20 senses in total. These include thermoception, the sense of warmth, equilibrioception, the sense of balance. There's also the sense of time, although not everyone seems to have that last one. We used to think that there were just 8 different blood types, but in reality, there are over 30 known blood group systems. Here on the bright side, our favorite blood group is B positive. Get it? For every pound of fat you gain, you generate 1 mile of new blood vessels to supply oxygen and nutrients to your body. Your stomach produces a new lining every 6 days to avoid digesting itself. Nerve cells transmit 1,000 nerve impulses a second. They travel between 1 and 268 miles per hour. Our DNA contains 100,000 viruses. Scientists have discovered one that goes back 100 million years. Your body emits visible light. You're the brightest at 4 p.m., and your glow is the least visible at 10 a.m. Unfortunately, this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Sweat is mostly water mixed with proteins, sugars, ammonia, and a lot of other stuff. It even contains tiny amounts of trace metals like copper, zinc, nickel, iron, and so on. What makes sweat taste salty is the sodium it contains. Plus, the more salt you eat, the saltier your sweat is. Your body's trying to get rid of the excess, and the fastest way is to sweat it out. If you walked 2 miles per hour, you'd have to walk for 20 hours straight to lose 1 pound. And it would take you 518 days and 8 hours to circle the equator. Earwax isn't actually wax. It contains fat, skin cells, sweat, and dirt. Your brain gets 3 times bigger over the first year of life and reaches its full maturity when you're 25. 60% of it is fat. Your brain generates around 23 watts of electrical power, which is enough to run a small light bulb. Humans can't really multitask. Your brain can't perform more than 1 action at the same time. It switches between them, which doesn't save time as you might think, but increases the possibility you'll do something wrong and makes the process longer. When you have an exam to take, or you're at work trying to focus on an important task, try chewing gum. Research showed it can help you stay concentrated for longer on tasks that require your full attention. studies even say that it's a better test aid than caffeine. There's nothing special in the gum, but the act of chewing wakes your brain up. The effect doesn't last long though, just for 20 minutes. Embryos develop fingerprints at 3 months. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Sunburn is the result of radiation exposure. When your body's natural defense mechanism gets overwhelmed trying to fight UV rays, a toxic reaction occurs that results in sunburn. Goosebumps are an evolutionary reflex left over from our ancestors. The release of adrenaline made their hair stand up, and they look scarier to approaching predators. Your body produces 1 to 3 pints of saliva every day. It helps you digest food and fights off infections. You also have a lot of bacteria in your mouth. Yeah, that's right. The average amount of bacteria in a person's mouth is almost the same as the number of people living on Earth. That's hard to digest. Each human has roughly 150,000 hairs on their head. Every strand grows around 1/2 inch per month. If we added the growth from each hair, it would measure the distance of 10 miles in just 1 year. Your hair is also a lot stronger than you think. A single strand can hold 3 ounces, which is the weight of an apple. If we combined the strength of all the hair on your head, it could support the weight of 2 elephants. Hey, let's try it. The beating sound your heart makes is the clap of valve leaflets opening and closing. Your heart doesn't replicate its cells unless you have an injury. Your corneas are the only part of your body that don't get blood. They get oxygen directly through the air. When you're sitting or standing upright, it's easier for you to recall some positive memories that make you feel good. Some believe it's because sitting up with your back flat boosts blood flow, and your brain gets more oxygen, which helps it function better. The man who has the deepest voice in the world, and that's definitely not me, can produce sounds that humans, including him, can't hear at all. But elephants can hear those sounds. Veins look blue because light has to go through layers of skin and fat to reach them. Your skin scatters a lot of the red portion of white light before it reflects the blood. This leaves only the blue light to bounce back to your eyes. A person who has anosmia is unable to detect smells. Phantosmia is the opposite condition, when someone smells an odor that isn't actually there. The human brain has 100 billion neurons. It's 73% water, and the same is true about the heart. That's why if your brain loses even 2% of its liquid, you start to feel tired. It also makes your memory worse, shortens your attention span, and puts a dampener on your mood. The earliest known person to have had blue eyes lived in the Stone Age, 7,000 years ago. Your right kidney is probably smaller and sits lower down than your left kidney to make room for your liver. By the way, your brain makes sure you don't drink too little or too much water. After you swallow some liquid, your mouth and throat start to fire signals to your brain, telling it to stop drinking. Otherwise, you'd keep gulping down water for the entire 10 to 60 minutes it takes the liquid to get to your cells. Your eyes can see something for a mere 13 milliseconds, and your brain will already process this image. The average blink lasts from 100 to 400 milliseconds. Even though the tongue isn't the strongest muscle in your body, it never gets tired. That's because of the way it's built. It's made up of 8 interwoven muscles. The tongue is the only muscle with ends not connected to bone. Other muscles join 2 bones at both ends because that's how we pull and make a motion. There are around 700 different species of bacteria in your mouth. Over 6 billion of them live there. Your skin is your largest organ. It can cover the surface area of 2 bath towels. It accounts for around 16% of body weight and is around 22 square feet. If you typed 60 words per minute for 8 hours a day, it would take you 50 years to type the human genome. You get tired pretty quickly when you're out in the heat. This happens because your body is trying really hard to keep itself cool, which puts a lot of extra work on it. So you get exhausted and tired, even if you don't do anything physically demanding. Your body has 78 organs, but only 5 of them are essential for survival: the brain, liver, kidney, lungs, and heart. Oh, the phone's ringing. Must be something urgent. at 11 p.m. Only all the gadgets in the house are silent. It's your ears that are ringing. You can also hear some hissing, whistling, buzzing, and even roaring. But all this noise doesn't have an external source. That's why it's known as phantom sounds. They can occur in one or both ears, constantly or from time to time. They're usually most noticeable at night, when nothing distracts you. Women have more taste buds on the surface of their tongues than men do. That's one of the reasons why 35% of ladies and only 15% of guys are super tasters. Those are people who feel flavors more strongly than others. Left-handed people usually prefer to chew on the left side, and right-handed people, well, you guessed it, chew on the right. Even if your fingerprints are damaged, they'll grow back in the same unique pattern. When breathing, a single lung only uses 5% of the oxygen you've inhaled.
Human feet. You know, those sometimes smelly things at the end of your legs? Yeah, those. Well, those are adapted to support us while walking upright. So the bones and ligaments in there are quite rigid. But some people have floppier feet that might indicate our ancestry. A study in nearly 400 people showed that about 1 out of 13 had them like that. Primates use their feet like we use our hands. They climb trees with agility. So they need to have floppy feet to do it efficiently. But humans from 2 million years in the past also had less rigid feet. Scientists believe studying people with this rare bone structure may help understand how ancient humans walked, and also whether this floppiness actually helps in climbing too. Now, our height, the shape of our body, and skin color depend on where our ancestors used to live. But we can adapt to new conditions even within our own lifespan. For example, if you move from plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you move from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will get pigmented to adapt. Now, a second pair of arms would come in handy in a lot of situations. But an extra pair of fingers might be helpful too. About 1 in every 500 people is born with 6 digits on either hand. In most cases, the extra fingers are considered useless and removed. But research has shown that those who've left them could do lots of everyday things with just one hand, like tying their shoelaces or playing video games with gamepads. Okay, how many fingers am I holding up now? About 1 in 25,000 people are born with the thumbs on their hands having 3 flanges instead of the usual 2, giving their hands a very extraordinary look. And when it happens in combinations with 6 fingers, which isn't too rare by the way, the picture is even more cryptic. Such a condition doesn't bring much discomfort. In fact, some actions are even easier done with a thumb that has an extra flange. Like thumbing your nose, perhaps. It's been believed for a long time that a person could distinguish more than 10,000 smells. Some research done not long ago showed that people were able to distinguish more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Like with Grandpa and the big baked bean party when you were a kid. We can accidentally digest small objects such as plastic items, glass, coins, and many other small objects. They'll make their way through the digestive tract within 48 hours. And there's even a man who managed to eat a whole airplane. Now, it took him years though, but little by little, he finished his metal meal with no trouble at all. I had a joke here about passing a landing gear, but yeah, I'll skip that one. Now, every person has their unique smell that can't be confused with anyone else's. It's exactly the same mechanism that allows other animals to find members of their family in packs and distinguish them from strangers. Still, if you have an identical twin, you will both have almost the same smell. Scientists found that body odors of identical twins are 10 times more similar than those of unrelated people. Unfortunately, a well-trained dog would still easily distinguish you two. Now, most people have 3 types of cones in their eyes, allowing us to see millions of colors. Women typically see more shades, but sometimes they see so much more that they're literally unable to comprehend the difference. That's thanks to a 4th cone in their eyes that enhances their vision 100-fold. And what's more, the number of women born with this extra cone is about 12%. but only a few of them can actually use it because in most cases it remains inactive. Now, imagine falling from the roof of a 10-story building and getting away with a few bruises and scratches, but no broken bones whatsoever. Such a genetic anomaly was discovered back in 1994, and it is associated with the LRP5 gene. It makes a person's bones about 8 times denser than normal, which basically makes them almost indestructible. There's a whole extended family in Connecticut that has this mutation, and all 20 members of it have extraordinarily dense bones. Scientists who did research of the blood samples of this family say they have the strongest skeletons in the world. Many people think that a cleft chin is a sign of a strong and independent character. But it's really a gene mutation, which results when the bones or muscles in the lower jaw don't fuse completely during development inside the womb. Just like many other anomalies, it's hereditary, which means, yes, you can blame your parents. However, if a person has a cleft chin, it doesn't necessarily mean that their offspring will have it too, because environmental factors in the womb or the presence of modifier genes, genes that influence other genes, can prevent it. There are no two identical brains in the world. Brain structure highly depends on conditions in which it develops and grows. And so, we all have something individual to us even on a biological level. And just like your fingers, your tongue too has a unique print on it that won't be like any other in the world. Nah, let's not compare tongues. A less impressive but not less rare condition is the so-called double crown. A crown is that patch of hair on top of your head that goes in a spiral. It's pretty hard to miss if you have short hair, especially because it's the hardest part to smooth down. People normally have one, but there are individuals unlucky enough to have two, and double the smoothing trouble. Still, some believe having a double crown is, on the contrary, a sign of good luck or even high intelligence. On a similar note, you ever wake up and look at your tousled hair with frustration? And now imagine having this disheveled look forever and not being able to do anything about it. It's called the uncombable hair syndrome. Your hair's always sticking out every which way, and no amount of water or hair gel can tame it. Heterochromia makes your eyes 2 different colors, say one hazel and the other blue. It has to do with the levels of melanin in your body, a pigment that affects the colors of your skin, hair, and, yes, your eyes. There's also partial heterochromia, which is only a part of one of your eyes is differently colored. It's not too common in humans, but I'll bet you've seen it in dogs, huskies in particular. This breed is naturally predisposed to this condition, and it looks super cool. Now, the rarest genetic condition there probably is, called the golden blood, can be a lifesaver for millions of people. There are just 40 known carriers of this blood type in the world. They don't have any Rh blood cell antigens, which means anyone can accept their blood, even those with extremely rare blood types. And although their blood isn't golden in color, it's certainly worth more than just gold. Now, turn your arm palm up on some flat surface and touch your pinky and thumb together. Now, look at your wrist. Do you see a muscle getting tense under your skin there? If you don't, that's okay. It only means you're in about 10% of people who don't have the palmaris longus. It's a muscle that scientists believe used to be useful for hanging and gripping in our ancestors. In modern humans, though, it has no real value, so we're evolving to drop it altogether. About 1/2 to 1% of people in the world have an extra hole next to their ears that serves no clear purpose. And it is pretty useless, although not dangerous either. It's just a sign that your ancestors used to have gills. According to estimations, only about 6% of the world's population can solve the Rubik's Cube. Despite it being just a skill like any other, most of us have to learn it, either by watching tutorials on the web or asking someone for help. And only a small percentage of people can actually solve it on their own. If you're one of them, you're a truly rare individual. Raising your eyebrows in surprise is a common thing, and raising just one to express skepticism isn't rare either. But it depends on which eyebrow you usually raise. If you can do this trick with either eyebrow, you're actually unique. Since your eyebrows are controlled by muscles, you can train yourself to raise either of them at will, but it often takes time and conscious effort. Moving your ears is about the same. Not so many people can do it. and there are even fewer of those who can wiggle just one ear instead of both. It's an ancient feature that dates back to our primate ancestors who used their ears to control their surroundings. And of course, it's still present in most mammals. Now, while most people around the world are right-handed, being a lefty puts you in a minority. That's not surprising. But a really remarkable thing is ambidexterity. Only about 1% of the world's population can use both their hands equally well, meaning they could hold a spoon, pick their nose, or write in their notebook switching hands with no trouble at all. How useful would that be? Alright, quick question. Do you think you know everything about your own body? Are you sure? Well, how about the fact that 25% of an adult's bones are in their feet? Or that taste buds aren't actually those bumps on your tongue? Well, get ready for some eye-openers. Ow! No, we're really not going to open someone's eyes. I don't do surgery here on the bright side. Well, maybe in a future video. Anyway, here we go with a big batch of biological background bots to boggle your brain. Your stomach gets a new lining every 3 to 4 days. This way, your body prevents the stomach from digesting itself. Your brain contains more than 86 billion nerve cells, which are joined with one another by 100 trillion connections. That's many more than the number of stars in our home Milky Way galaxy. By the way, if you decided to count all those numerous nerve cells in your brain, it would take you up to 3,000 years. Better get started. Your fingernails grow faster on your dominant hand. In other words, if you write with your right hand, you'll have to trim those nails more often. Your fingernails also grow faster in the summer and during the day. When your brain sends messages to different parts of your body, the signals travel along your nerves at a speed of up to 270 miles per hour. It's way faster than a sports car. People spend more than 4 years of their lives eating. Wow, is the restaurant service that slow? Just kidding. The fastest muscles in your body are those that make your eyes blink. Their contraction speed is 1 blink in less than 1/100th of a second. In a day, you can blink more than 15,000 times. In their lifetime, the average person processes more than 100,000 pounds of food. That's more than the weight of 7 elephants combined. And how do you eat an elephant? Yeah, 1 bite at a time. If someone decided to uncoil the human DNA, the whole thing would stretch for 10 billion miles, which is 40,000 times more than the distance between the Earth and the Moon. If you don't have insomnia, you're likely to spend around 1/3 of your life asleep. But there are creatures that sleep even more. For example, for a dog, this time is 44% of their life, and for a python, 75%. During just one day, all the blood in your body travels more than 12,000 miles. That's half as long as the distance around Earth. Your skeleton will renew itself completely within 10 years. And yes, without surgery. An adult uses around 200 muscles to make just one step. And don't tell me I don't work out enough. Every minute, your body sheds more than 3,000 skin cells. It's almost 200,000 skin cells per hour and more than 9 pounds per year. Hey, it's the Shedding Skin Cells weight loss plan. But don't worry, you still have about 300 million skin cells at any given moment. Plus, your skin completely renews itself every 28 to 30 days. The liver is the only human organ that can regenerate completely. As little as 25% of the original liver weight can get back to its full size. Skin cells create a lot of dust, not only under your bed, but also in the Earth's atmosphere. If someone collected all the flaked-off skin cells floating in the air, this dust would weigh up to 1 billion tons. It's 150 times the weight of the Great Pyramid. How's that for a comparison? Now, you won't see your taste buds by the naked eye because they're too tiny. The small bumps most people take for taste buds are called papillae. Real taste buds are on top of these hair-like projections. By the way, taste buds also have a very short life cycle. They live for no longer than 10 to 14 days, so they get a very short taste of life. The average person has more than 100,000 hairs on their head. And since this hair grows about 6 inches per year, it'll make more than 40 feet in a lifetime. Some people can hear their eyeballs moving inside the eye sockets. Wow, that must be no fun. Now, unlike other parts of your body, your ears and nose never stop growing. Well, that must be no fun. Your skin wrinkles if you stay in the water for too long, but not because it absorbs water. When your body's wet, wrinkled fingers and toes provide you with a better grip. You know, like when the treads on your car tires grip the road better when they're new. Your eyes are an amazing instrument. They can distinguish between 10 million different colors. Your brain uses more than 20% of your body's energy, even when you're resting. When you're asleep, it still consumes almost as much power as when you're awake. It also burns about 330 calories per day at that. An adult person has about 25% of all their bones in their feet. Most of them are tiny but crucial. If these bones are out of alignment, so is the rest of the body. You breathe around 20,000 times a day. Try not to stop. I actually set a personal best record today for consecutive days breathing, and I plan to top that tomorrow. Human bones are a real paradox. They're almost 5 times stronger than a steel bar with the same width, but can fracture on impact and are rather brittle. Fingers don't have muscles that can make them move. All the muscles that move the finger joints are located in the forearm and palm. Your body contains more than 37 trillion cells. Earth has more than 7 billion inhabitants. It means that there are over 5,000 times more cells in your body than people on our planet. It surely depends on your lifestyle and on how much you move, but the average person will walk up to 110,000 miles in their lifetime, which is half as long as the distance from Earth to the Moon, or more than 4 times longer than the distance around our planet. Now, if a person has anosmia, also called smell blindness, they can't distinguish and detect smells, but they can still be smelly. Sorry. You start feeling thirsty when water loss is 1% of your body weight. More than 5% and you may faint. Water loss that's bigger than 10% of the body weight and dehydration can end a person, if you know what I mean. The strongest muscle in your body based on its weight is your jaw muscle. Yeah, mine is way overdeveloped. At any moment, 50,000 cells in your body are getting replaced by new ones. Boy, that sounds like a company I used to work for. By the end of their life, the average person can recall up to 150 trillion pieces of information, except where they left their car keys. Even if fingerprints are badly damaged, they can still grow back with their original pattern. Your most powerful sneeze can travel at a speed of more than 100 miles per hour, almost as fast as a skydiver in freefall. The average person has about 250 hairs in each eyebrow. These hairs get completely replaced every 4 months. Your brain's memory capacity is equivalent to about 4 terabytes on a hard drive, which is more than 8 million photos. People are the only living creatures that can naturally sleep on their backs. Even apes usually sleep in a sitting position, leaning on something. Your longest bone is your thigh bone, not your funny bone, and the tiniest one is in your ear. It's shorter than a grain of rice. The largest organ in your body is your skin. Despite being thin, it weighs a surprising 9 to 11 pounds. That's the weight of a healthy and well-fed house cat. Your skull may feel like it's all in one piece, but in fact, it consists of 29 different bones. The only part of your body that can't heal itself is your teeth. What a shame. Right-handed people tend to chew most of their food on the right side of their mouths, while the left-handed opt for the other side. Out of all people who can move their ears, only 30% can move just one ear. Ooh, such talent! Every person has dimples on their lower back, but in some people they're more pronounced than in others. These dimples appear in places where the pelvis is connected with the sacrum, so their existence, even if it's not apparent, makes sense. Your right lung is shorter than the left one because it has to leave some room for your liver. The left lung, on the other hand, is narrower since it has to make space for the heart. A male's lungs can usually hold more air than a woman's. Surprisingly, you burn more calories when you're sleeping than when you're watching TV. Actually, that should tell you something helpful. By the time you turn 60, you're likely to lose 50% of your taste buds. Your hair grows twice faster when you're traveling by plane. It has to do with higher atmospheric pressure. The muscles that help your eyes focus make around 100,000 movements a day. If you want to make your leg muscles move as much, you'd need to walk 50 miles. When you listen to music, your heart starts beating in sync with it. Hair, it's all around you. Tiny, almost invisible, or really, really long. Black, blonde, red, gray, or any color you like. Thick and shiny, hopefully. Shining, gleaming, streaming, flaxen, waxen. You might even try to get rid of some of it, but hair, like the 60s musical on Broadway, keeps coming back. There are a few body parts that aren't covered with hair, like our palms, soles, and lips. Palms would stay the same in a hairless world, but you'd probably have different hands, with no fingernails at all. They're technically hair, they're made of keratin too. Modified hair at your fingertips. No toenails either. If you enjoy mellow bird songs, music, or the sound of the ocean, congrats, you have hair. Sounds weird, but tiny hairs in your ear actually help you hear everything around you. There are tiny hair cells with tiny bristles in the inner ear, and they kind of brush against sensory cells which help detect sound. When you get older, some of these hairs fall out, so it's harder to hear things. But in a hairless world, we'd all be deaf, huh? Those tiny hairs help fluid vibrate inside the inner ear, in the part of the ear called the cochlea. Looks like a snail, right? Ooh, snails in your ear! Inside the cochlea, there are lots of teeny tiny hairs that vibrate together with the fluid and are connected to nerves. But that's not all. The same tiny hairs are responsible for balance. They hang out in the ear canals that are full of fluid. When you move, the fluid moves as well, and this helps you feel where you are in space. With no ear hair, we wouldn't know where down was. So, you can't hear, you can't tell which way is up, and you can forget about walking. You'd need to have someone with hair to guide you. We'd all need guide dogs. Let's do some math. Over 7 billion humans, and only about 900 million dogs in the world. We're gonna need more dogs. We basically use hair every single moment of our life, even when we just breathe. Nose hairs can be pretty annoying. They stick out to say hello and make your nose all itchy. Why not pluck them out? Well, nose hairs are one of the best defenses our bodies have. A world without nose hair would be a totally different place. Your nose is helpless now, poor little thing. You'd inhale a lot of stuff that doesn't belong up there. You're not going to accidentally inhale a pen or a Q-tip. That's not what you have to look out for. They're too big for your nostrils anyway, unless you shove them up there. No, it's dust you'd really need to be afraid of. No safe place for you and your precious nose, not even at home. Without any nose hair, you'd have to wash the floors at least 3 times a day just to avoid choking on dust that you'd normally never even notice. If you want to make a big splash at a birthday party, buy the guest of honor a robotic vacuum. Without nose hair, you'd almost never take off that ski mask that covers your face, complete with detachable transparent shield. You want to go outside? You gotta put it on. You might want to avoid mirrors. You look like an old-school iron welder. It ain't stylish, but it's the best way to protect your face. Even if you went out on a date, you'd always be wearing that thing. And you can forget about bringing flowers. The smell isn't the problem. A hairless world would still smell good or bad. Nose hair doesn't have anything to do with that. Specialized sensory cells in your nose are the ones picking up the scent. It's the pollen that would freak people out. It's game over if that stuff gets in your hairless nose. I'm talking non-stop sneezing. Ugh! So much it makes your abs sore. No more roses on Valentine's Day, people. You'd have no eyelashes either. This one's a big one. You really need them to protect your eyes. Eyelashes are like a knight's shield, effortlessly protecting your eyes from dust and lint. When your eyes are closed, lashes add an extra layer of protection. It's like a fortress. Without them, you might even go blind. But these awesome shields do more than just protect your beautiful eyeballs. They also help keep your eye temperature steady, your very own personal teeny tiny trees, giving you some sweet shade. If you want a business idea for a new hairless world, choose glasses. You'd make millions. They'd be a must for everyone, sunny, cloudy, whatever. But they'd look more like a scuba mask than those new shades you bought at the mall. They'd have a built-in nose filter, stylish, And they'd be really pricey. Like I said, you'd make millions. Most people would probably stick with their welding shield, cheap but effective. Eyebrows get a bad rap, like they're not that important. Some even pluck them vigorously and end up with 2 super narrow lines. But eyebrows keep sweat away from your eyes, and they're sort of an anti-glare protection. It's pretty easy to solve an eyebrow problem, just pop on that handy mask. But get this, no eyebrows, no emotions. Head over to a mirror. Look angry, look sad, look interested. Your eyebrows are dancing all over the place. But humans are pretty creative. They'd probably start drawing them on. Maybe stylish thin lines, or something more crazy. Flowers, geometric designs. How about 2 black cats sleeping right there on your brow? And you know, some people would be into fake eyebrows, probably made out of faux fur. Might want to stock up on those as well. You could make trillions. Our skin that's covered with hair would suffer too. Those tiny hairs on your arms and legs protect you from all sorts of dust, dirt, and grease. Without them, that stuff would be clogging up your pores, making your skin all greasy. Yuck. The most obvious thing about a hairless world is that we'd all be bald – babies, kids, men, and women. Wigs of all kind would turn into a multi-billion-dollar industry. Hopefully, they'd hire all those out-of-work hairdressers. No more waxing or shaving either, by the way, guys. And no more gray hair. Calm down, Grandpa. Stress, diet, and lifestyle can all contribute to those pesky gray hairs popping out all over your beautiful head. Regular exercise, eating more fruits and vegetables, and lowering your stress levels at work and at home may help you slow down the process, except in a hairless world. It doesn't matter anyway. It might be a lot harder to tell someone's age without hair, especially if we're all walking around with scuba masks on. Our bodies would have to change a lot to adapt and thrive. The main function of our body hair is to keep our body temperature just right. It's called thermoregulation. But since people sweat and hair is the perfect spot for bacteria to thrive, people would smell less. No hair basically means no home for bacteria. Hairless people might actually be better at some sports. Not by much, though. Swimmers who shave their legs are 0.6 to 0.7% quicker than those who don't. We'd also be less prone to injuries. Hairless body parts don't swell up so much after minor bumps or bruises. If our bodies had no hair at all, our skin might be totally different. Without hair to keep our body at the perfect temperature, we'd have to use fat. We'd have to evolve some extra fat under our skin to keep our body temperature steady. And say goodbye to soft and thin skin, we'd probably develop thicker and rougher skin for protection. We probably wouldn't even have goosebumps anymore. They're formed at the base of the hair, so no hair might mean no more goosebumps. We'd have to invent another way of showing a whole bunch of feelings, like if we're cold, frightened, or excited. Hey, maybe our tongues would swell. What if we could change the way we smell instead? Like if we're cold, we'd suddenly smell like pumpkin spice latte. Toasty. And let's spare a thought for all the people left out of our new hairless world. Rapunzel would be stuck up in that tower forever. And what about those slow-mo hair commercials? I'm gonna miss those. Yep, hair today, gone tomorrow. Thanks for everything, hair.
People went outside and stopped in wonder. Some gooey stuff was covering the ground. Whitish, gelatinous blobs had turned the outside world into a scene out of a creepy sci-fi movie. This mystery evoked lots of discussion, and experts offered different theories. But it turned out that the situation was even worse than previously thought. The blobs reportedly made the people who came into contact with them sick. But let's start from the very beginning. It was the summer of 1994 in the timber town of Oakville, when gelatinous blobs were found on the ground. People thought they had rained from the sky because where else could they have come from? This find caused panic and confusion among the residents of the area. But actually, it was just the first appearance of this gooey substance. Flecks of goo, which were actually smaller than a grain of rice, fell down from the sky several times. The volume was very high, and when they accumulated on the ground and shed roofs, they became visible. Around 10 days after the first occurrence, a newspaper wrote an article about the blobs. Other than that, there seemed to be no other confirmed and official reports about this mysterious substance. Until a National Weather Service employee in the area got a call from an unidentified man in August. The man claimed that some hot, metallic particles falling from the sky had burned holes in his kid's trampoline. Apparently, it was time to examine the Oakville blobs. A hospital reportedly looked at them under a microscope and made a terrifying discovery. The researchers stated that the substance contained human white cells. This encouraged some people to suppose that the blobs were probably concentrated fluid waste from an airplane toilet. This theory was debunked after a spokesperson of the Federal Aviation Administration explained that toilet fluids were usually dyed blue, which gave them the nickname blue ice. Another theory trying to explain the Oakville blobs suggested they had something to do with jellyfish. Some experts agreed that this idea was plausible. Something the size of portions of jellyfish could have been pulled up into the atmosphere and moved to another location during a storm. After all, raining animals is nothing new, but we'll speak about that later. At the same time, 6 events of the Oakville blobs raining down from the sky were reported, which made it hard to imagine jellyfish particles floating around in the sky for so long. On the 20th of August 1994, the New York Times reported that the mysterious gooey substance had once been alive. This article followed an analysis made by the Washington State Department of Ecology. The scientists who had tested the blobs announced that they had found out that the substance contained a number of cells of different sizes. Interestingly, those results brought an end to the human white cell theory since it turned out that the cells didn't have any nuclei. But that's something you definitely see in human white cells and jellyfish as well. These creatures are multicellular organisms whose cells contain nuclei. But what kind of life wouldn't have nuclei? For example, bacteria and some other microorganisms similar to them. An expert working on this mystery said that the blobs had no clearly visible structure, and it didn't appear even when they used a microscope. In the end, the researchers concluded that the substance contained 2 types of bacteria, both found in the digestive tracts of humans and other mammals. They were also often found when waste was deposited. These bacteria could travel in the water and through the air. The goo could be some kind of a carrier system. Unfortunately, the scientists admitted that they didn't have any hard evidence to support their idea. To add to the mystery, the samples reportedly went missing before the researchers could finish their work. But is it true that the weird blobs made people sick? At first sight, yes. A few Oakville residents reported becoming ill and experiencing similar flu-like symptoms after touching the Oakville blobs. But was it a direct consequence? No one knows. Experts admit that the cases of illness could have been a coincidence, which makes the incident even more intriguing. So far, the mystery remains unsolved. Now let's move on to the other stuff falling from the sky. Bad news. Some of it can be totally disgusting. Like worms falling from the sky in China and wiggling on people's cars. Some people thought it was an animal rain, while others were not convinced. They stated that the video was fake since the worms were only on vehicles but not on the ground. Others were sure worm rains were a totally normal thing in March. Ugh, luckily not where I live. But the most shocking thing? Bizarre worm rains happened in the British Isles too. For example, in Scotland, kids were playing soccer when worms started raining down. The reason could be a substantial weather change, or who knows what. But the cases of animal rain actually started long ago. In 1877, an unusual tornado hit a farm in Southern California, bringing along several tiny alligators about 1 foot in length. In 1894, a tornado moved through England, dropping poisonous jellyfish on people's heads. Even though some witnesses claimed those were not jellyfish but tadpoles, the incident was still extremely strange. In 1876, in Kentucky, black humor rain was recorded. That was when chunks of meat fell from the sky. Now, let me tell you, if you're squeamish, you might want to skip this part. Okay, I've warned you. Locals claimed the meat tasted like mutton, but later, researchers discovered that buzzards flying over the area must have felt unwell and regurgitated their meal right in the air. Ew, told ya. All these are instances of the animal rain, a rare meteorological phenomenon in which flightless animals fall from the sky. Such cases have been reported throughout history, starting from 1794, when French soldiers saw toads fall to the ground during heavy rain near the French city of Lille. How do such rains occur? It might be different for different species. For example, frogs and toads often roam the countryside in large numbers. Powerful winds can pick them up and carry them for great distances. Or let's take fish. In 1861, there was a reported rain of fish in Singapore. And a naturalist speculated at that time a migration of walking catfish could be taking place. So the wind might have dragged them over land from one puddle to another, as if they had been following the rain. In any case, the most common explanation of such cases is that there is no actual falling at all. Animals are just driven along by winds or something of the kind. This can also explain why typically only one single species of animal is reported raining from the sky. Another probable explanation involves tornado waterspouts. Those are tornadoes forming over the water. A tornadic waterspout can potentially transport animals to relatively high altitudes and carry them to remote locations. This idea is supported by the suggestion that animal rains are often preceded by storms. At the same time, this theory doesn't explain why each incident involves just one species, not a group of similarly sized animals from the same habitat. Here are some other examples of animal rains. In 1947, fish started falling to the ground in Louisiana. And in 2005, it rained frogs in Serbia. In 2010, a small town in Australia experienced a rain of perches. These occurrences were most likely caused by tornadoes, lifting things from the ground and water and depositing them in totally different areas. Sometimes, even iguanas might fall onto your head. When it's really cold, they go into hibernation mode to survive. But even though they might look frozen, they're still alive. When it gets warmer, they start moving again. But unfortunately, while in that chilled state, they might fall down from trees, which is dangerous both for the animals themselves and for passers-by.
There's an amazing place in Ethiopia, East Africa, called Hadar. This place is a treasure trove. We found tons of old animal fossils there. And among those remnants, we discovered something very special: the fossils of a creature called Australopithecus afarensis. One of these guys was found almost complete. You might know it today by the name Lucy, after a famous song by the Beatles. Lucy was a small lady, only about as tall as a kitchen counter. She lived 3.2 million years ago and became a huge celebrity when we found her in 1974. She helped us learn more about our early ancestors, creatures called Australopithecines. Around 10 to 12 million years ago, there was a group of animals that broke into two branches. One of the branches led to modern apes, while the other led to humans. This separation happened because one group decided to stay in trees and became what we now call gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans. They moved around using all four limbs and lived in forests. But the other group decided to live on the ground and try walking on two legs. Because of that, their brains started getting bigger over time. And over millions of years, they became bald monkeys who watch videos on YouTube. Yeah, you know who you are. Lucy, like other Australopiths, was a bit different from us. She still looked like an ape and lived during a transitional stage. She could walk on two legs, but didn't do it all the time. Sometimes she climbed trees, just like a monkey. She and her buddies were the first step in human evolution. Then came a new branch of evolution, Homo habilis, or handyman. They were the first members of the Homo genus because they were the ones to start developing stone tools and first show human creativity. They probably used these tools for scavenging and processing food. We found the first clues about them back in the 1960s. They walked around East Africa about 3 million years ago. They were pretty small, about 4 feet 7 inches tall. They didn't climb trees anymore and mostly walked on the ground. Their skull shape already resembled ours, unlike the more pear-shaped heads of Australopiths. That's because they had larger brains. After them, we had Homo erectus, the upright man. They lived about 2 million to 70,000 years ago. The name hints that this was the first hominin species that walked on 2 legs almost all the time. They were also the first to migrate out of Africa, spreading to Asia and Europe. And here, we had the real breakthrough. Representatives of Homo erectus had even larger brains and learned to make more creative and advanced tools. They created the first choppers, cleavers, and hammers, and used flakes as scrapers and knives. They probably used a lot of things – wood, bark, and even grass to make the first strings and ropes. With all that, they learned how to hunt large animals and probably hunted together a lot. They were also the first ones to start using fire, which changed our history forever. Over time, more Homo species emerged, including the famous Neanderthals. They're known for their European roots. They split from our common ancestor around 400,000 years ago. Now, even though we share one common ancestor, we didn't evolve from Neanderthals. They were a separate branch. All Neanderthals went extinct, but our evolutionary branch coexisted with them a long time ago. Neanderthals were resourceful, hunting both land and sea creatures. They left behind thousands of stone tools and even decorated caves with paintings. They had their own ceremonies, too. They started to bury those who passed away. They probably noticed that leaving them in the wild leads to spreading diseases and attracting scavengers. But they also showed care and love in their burial rituals. Then it was time for archaic Homo sapiens. They lived around 500,000 to 200,000 years ago, emerging in Africa and Europe. This was the last leg between our ancestors and our modern species, Homo sapiens. The brain just kept getting bigger. They started to show more complex behaviors, not only burial and interesting stone tools, but also smart hunting strategies and planning for the future. They probably had a diverse diet that included both hunting and gathering. And finally, we reached the anatomically modern Homo sapiens. They emerged around 200,000 years ago in Africa. They had a similar skeletal structure and brain size to modern humans, and their behavior was pretty close to ours. They had complex social structures, started thinking in symbols, and so on. They migrated out of Africa around 60,000 years ago, spreading across the globe and eventually replacing other hominin species, such as Neanderthals. They started to create their first languages and form their first words. The first words were probably very simple, like "ah" to call someone and "ma" for babies. After evolving into our final stage, we started advancing in our cultural and technological development. This development became very rapid over the last 200,000 years. About 12,000 years ago, the Neolithic period, also known as the New Stone Age, began. It marked the end of the glacial period. Humans started living in settled villages instead of constantly moving around. This change was brought about by the advent of agriculture, which allowed people to grow crops and raise animals like goats and sheep. Early humans started to domesticate animals, such as sheepdogs, for herding. We also started making the first art, leaving famous drawings in caves, handprints, animals, mostly cows, hunting, and many others. We even created the first currency. We began using clay tokens for transactions. This marked the beginning of commerce and the use of money. And finally, we started writing. And now the events could be recorded and passed down through written records. This is when history officially began. From that point on, we saw the development of agriculture, the rise of complex societies, the invention of writing and the wheel, and the emergence of civilizations. Our tools became more and more sophisticated, languages appeared, leading to the diverse cultures and societies seen today. So, why have we stopped evolving? The truth is, we haven't. Human evolution is an ongoing process, although it's not as dramatic as it used to be. We adapt to different environments, have different skin tones, appearances, body sizes, and genetic mutations that have influenced traits like lactose intolerance or resistance to certain diseases. But the world we live in today is very different from the one our ancestors inhabited. We don't suffer as much because we've developed technology, culture, and social systems. Thanks to this, evolution slowed down, seeing that we're doing okay as we are now. What we started experiencing is cultural evolution rather than a physical one. Plus, 200,000 years is a pretty short time period, considering the time span of the universe or even of our Earth. We should see what happens to us in hundreds of thousands of years. I won't be around then, but there are some theories about that. There's a big idea that, in the future, humans and machines might merge into one super being. We call it technological singularity, a state where we humans lead our technologies to the point where we won't be able to control their development anymore. For example, if AI gets so advanced, it will change everything about how we live. Despite the current rise of AI, we shouldn't be too worried about it taking over the world, at least not in the next few decades. All we've developed now is weak artificial intelligence, little simulations. They might look scary to those who don't know much about AI, but the truth is, they have yet far to go before they reach the grand complexity of the human brain, not to mention consciousness. However, many people believe it's only a matter of time before AI reaches this level of intelligence, and then our world might change forever. There are other possibilities too. For example, one day we might reach a level where we merge with machines and learn to upload our consciousness in the cloud. In that case, we might become a hive mind, taking over the internet using our brains, becoming one giant consciousness. No matter what happens in the future, one thing's certain: technology is changing fast, and it's going to affect all of us sooner or later.
What if 99% of humanity disappeared? First off, we're talking about a massive reduction in people, leaving only 80 million humans on the entire planet. But hey, don't panic just yet. Let's see how this wild ride would unfold. Imagine bustling cities turned into ghost towns, empty highways and quiet neighborhoods. It'd be like a never-ending vacation for those left behind. Of course, there'd be some challenges to tackle, like whoops, untended gas mains causing fires, and those abandoned chemical storage facilities and industrial plants might create some pollution. Oh, and let's not forget about abandoned nuclear power plants. Wild animals would be more free, and poor domestic cattle and sheep would struggle in cold northern climates. To make things worse, stored gasoline wouldn't last long because it's not so great at staying stable. Let's get to the silver lining. With only 80 million people, there would be plenty of resources. Organizing and salvaging whatever's left would be totally doable, especially in smaller countries like Belgium. They'd probably have a, "Hey, we got this" attitude. They'd have just around 120,000 folks left, all within a couple of hours' drive from each other. That is, of course, if this remaining 1% of the world's population is scattered around the planet equally based on countries' populations before this event happened. In this case, pretty much every nation would face a similar situation. Imagine South Korea with 500,000 people, mostly hanging out together. Brazil would have 2 million inhabitants chilling out along the Atlantic coast. Hopefully, unlike those movies where post-apocalyptic gangs go mad, the survivors would try to stick together in their old communities. These resourceful fellas would band together in new family and village communities, and they'd have the knowledge and skills to handle any troublemakers. Remember, we're social creatures, and we'd want to stick together to face the unknown. Well, at least we wouldn't have to start from scratch here. We'd have a major advantage. All the knowledge accumulated by humanity would still be with us. If we had electricity and internet available, we would be okay. So, would we re-industrialize? Yeah, we would. We'd have tools and machines still lying around, giving us a head start. Sure, renewable energy might be tricky at first, and we might have to rely on fossil fuels like coal, but we're resourceful, and we'd find a way to make it work. Plus, we'd have some brilliant minds with critical skills who'd step up to the challenge. This type of stuff kind of happened in real life. Think of the historical collapse events. They made an epic comeback that spanned centuries. Back in the 14th century, a plague struck and claimed the lives of up to half of all Europeans. The Middle East was also impacted, with around a tenth of the global population succumbing to the disease. Surprisingly, this devastating event had little negative impact on Europe's technological and economic progress. And 2 centuries later, the population eventually rebounded to how it was before. 2 other instances of collapse are that of Rome in the Bronze Age. Both brought down impressive civilizations that had enjoyed technological advancements and economic prosperity and engaged in international trade. The Bronze Age collapse occurred between 1200 and 1150 BCE, leading to the fall of Mycenaean, Mycenaean Greece and Hittite civilizations, and the weakening of Egyptian and Assyrian civilizations. To this day, historians remain uncertain about the exact reasons behind this collapse. Rome, once boasting over 1 million inhabitants and serving as the seat of the Western Roman Empire for centuries, faced a dramatic decline in the 5th century. Within a few decades, the entire empire collapsed. It took until the 1930s for Rome to surpass its previous peak population. Fortunately, there are no historical examples of collapse events that resulted in more than 20% of the global population's demise. Many aspects of our physical infrastructure, such as machines, tools, and buildings, would still be intact and usable, placing us in a far better position than in 2500 BCE. The remaining 80 million survivors would have access to the wealth of knowledge accumulated by humanity. Moreover, some individuals might hold critical professions like engineers or chemists. It's quite likely that some people would have agricultural knowledge, helping feed the population. Okay, but let's make this scenario more personal. If you woke up one day to find 99% of the population missing, it would undoubtedly be an overwhelming and surreal experience. Survival would become your immediate priority, and your actions would largely depend on the resources and skills available to you. Here's what you would probably do. You'd take a moment to comprehend what's happened. This sudden disappearance of people would be shocking and confusing. Your friends and family would most probably be gone too, like it happened in Avengers. Your primary focus would be securing essential survival items, such as food, water, shelter, and medical supplies. You'd need to visit nearby grocery stores, pharmacies, and warehouses to gather provisions that could last for an extended period. Then you'd need to find other survivors. I mean, many people now lack essential skills like growing food, purifying water, or self-defense. You'd need to start learning them if there was no internet and no YouTube tutorials to rely on. Well, libraries, museums, and educational institutions have tons of information about the world and its history. Once you formed a community, you and your fellas would have to protect it like there's no tomorrow. You might feel like there isn't one at that point anyway. While most technology might still work initially, you'd need to ensure the protection of power sources. To do that, you'd have to be very cautious. The world would be in turmoil, so you'd need to remain vigilant and cautious of potential dangers. Without proper law enforcement and governance, there could be risks from wild animals, natural disasters, or even other survivors who might be hostile. Now let's explore the best and worst case scenarios. The sudden disappearance of so many people would create widespread chaos, leading to mass accidents and damage. With the absence of healthcare professionals and medical supplies, diseases could spread, leading to health crises. Food production and distribution systems would collapse, and food shortages and famine could become a real possibility. Looting and violence could occur since desperate people would search for resources and try to survive. The best case scenario is that after all this chaos, survivors would eventually come together to support one another and form resilient communities. The world would have significantly fewer carbon emissions, leading to a positive impact on the environment. With a small population, resources like food and water might be more abundant and sustainable in the long run. Without the constraints of a highly populated world, people could focus on individual passions, arts, and creativity. With advanced technology still available, survivors might start working on preserving knowledge and advancing scientific research. But overall, the world would change drastically, and the future would be uncertain. Your actions and the actions of other survivors would play a crucial role in shaping the new world and determining its trajectory. Feeling like a fishing pro? Head to the nearest water body and try your luck at reeling in some aquatic treats. Now, here's an idea. Become a green thumb superstar. Plant those seeds, nurture your crops, and watch your mini farm flourish. Farm-to-table cuisine, anyone? And how about those furry friends? If you spot any wandering pets, befriend them, and you've got yourself some loyal companions. Now take a deep breath, chin up, and embrace your inner survival guru. Remember, this might be a wild ride, but you've got the spirit and the skills to thrive in this post-apocalyptic feast of life. So go out there.
You know these before and after makeovers? Well, if you saw a pic of an average human who lived about 1 million years ago compared to a pic of an average human who lives today, you'd be astonished. And get this, it's a makeover performed by Mother Nature. Like back in the day, the earliest human species were basically tiny with long arms and short legs. They needed a big digestive tract to handle all those plants they were chowing down on, and their rib cages were super wide to make room for all the organs breaking down their food. Time went by and some of these humans started adapting to hot climates, and they all got narrow and leggy to stay cool. They started eating meat and other quick-to-digest foods, which meant they could have smaller digestive tracts and use more energy for their tall bodies and big brains. And when humans spread to colder climates, they evolved short, wide bodies to conserve heat, but they still loved their raw meat and cooked food, which could be easily processed in a short digestive tract. Check out this skeleton of an 8 to 9-year-old Homo erectus kid from East Africa. He was already 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighed 106 pounds. If he had grown up, he could have been almost 6 feet tall. His lean body was perfect for hot, dry environments. And then there were the Neanderthals, who were only about 5 foot 4 inches tall on average. They had short, broad bodies that were great for dealing with winter cold and even ice ages. Junk food is bad for our teeth, but did you know that it can also cause dental crowding? Back in the day, our ancestors had straight teeth with wisdom teeth. But thanks to processed diets and milling technologies, our jaws have shrunk and our teeth are now vying for limited space. So, if you want to avoid a mouthful of crooked teeth, stick to a less processed diet. As humans spread out and adapted to different environments, they changed their body shapes to survive. And as diets changed, so did bodies. But one thing's for sure, early humans were super active, with thicker and stronger bones than we have today. Nowadays, we're evolving sleeker and weaker bones thanks to our less physically demanding lifestyles. Yeah, it's cool to see how much we changed over time. Humans were cool back in the day, but they're probably even cooler now. You may not know it, but your bones are like supermodels. They're designed to be used all the time, and they look pretty good too. But guess what's even stronger? Your teeth. When you bite down, your teeth can exert a whopping 5,600 pounds of pressure per square inch. That's some serious chomping power. Speaking of bones, did you know that they're made up of water? Yep, about 25% of your bone mass is actually H2O. And here's another fun fact. Your eyes are like car engines. They need fluids to function properly, just like an engine needs gasoline. So when you blink up to 20,000 times a day, you're basically giving your eyes a windshield wash. Have you ever blushed and felt your cheeks turn red? Well, did you know that your stomach lining can blush too? When you blush, there's an increased blood flow in your body, and that includes your stomach lining. It turns red because it has plenty of blood vessels, and when there's more blood than usual, it shows. Now, we all know that plastic is bad for the environment, but did you know that we can actually digest it in tiny quantities? However, our digestive system can't handle grass. Grazing animals have special teeth and several stomachs to process raw leaves and grass, while we're stuck with just one stomach. We all have two super fast muscles that control our eyelids closing. They're actually the fastest muscles in our body, and they shut our eyes within a mere 0.1 second when triggered. And while we still don't know why we blink, we do know that women blink more often than men, and that we tend to blink in unison when watching a movie with friends. Maybe it's just a weird human thing. You flex that strong handshake and think it's all because of your gym grind? Ha! Turns out your pinky finger is the real MVP. No joke. Believe it or not, that little finger packs a punch and is responsible for 50% of your hand strength. Who knew the underdog could be such a powerhouse? Your toes are like two little homies that carry almost half of your body weight. And don't even listen to people who say you don't need them. Your toes are the most important guys when it comes to walking and pushing you forward. Our hair color is easily explained by genes. There are not more than 2% of people with natural red hair. They're followed by blondes, about 3%, and by all the varieties of brown shades, only about 11%. The vast majority goes to black hair, including very dark brown. Who knew that nails had a secret talent besides helping us pick up tiny objects and peel off stickers? They also give us a structure to press against so we know how firmly to hold anything. Talk about multi-talented. Move over, Rapunzel. It's not just our hair and nails that can grow. Our liver can regenerate itself from just 51% of its original size back to full size. But don't go damaging it too much, or you'll end up with scars. Did you know that the skin is the largest organ in our body? It makes up a whopping 15% of our total body weight. And if you shed more than your fluffy cat Snowball, don't worry, it's normal. We lose up to 9 pounds of skin cells every year. Gross, but fascinating. Who would have thought that tomatoes have more genes than humans? But don't worry, it's not the number of genes that matters. It's how they all work together. So go ahead and enjoy that tomato sauce on your pizza. Hold your nose the next time you eat and see how much your taste buds fade. It turns out that the nose is actually responsible for 75 to 95% of our taste perception. So don't underestimate the power of those sniffers. Keep your mouth hydrated or your taste buds won't work properly. Saliva triggers chemical reactions with enzymes that break down the food as soon as it enters your mouth. So drink up and savor those flavors. Forget about distinguishing between 10,000 smells. Recent research shows that we can actually differentiate between over 1 trillion smells. And not only that, but smells can evoke some distant memories too. So next time you catch a whiff of something familiar, take a moment to reminisce. When you're snoozing away, your sense of smell goes on vacation too. So even if your room smells like a dumpster fire, you won't even notice it. Sweet dreams, right? And speaking of dreams, did you ever wonder why some of them are in black and white, while others are like a rainbow explosion? Well, apparently it all depends on the TV you watched as a kid. So I guess your grandparents had some pretty boring dreams, huh? Now let's talk about listening to your heart. Not only is it a great metaphor for following your dreams, but it can also give you away if you're lying. Yeah, your heart rate starts racing like Usain Bolt when you're fibbing. Okay, brace yourself for this one. Even if you brush your teeth like a champ and use mouthwash like it's going out of style, your mouth is still a germ hotspot. Gross, right? But don't worry, most of those bacteria are actually good for us and keep the bad stuff away. But wait, there's more. The belly button is actually the second dirtiest place on our bodies. Yeah, I know, who knew? Since we don't really use it after we're born, it becomes a breeding ground for all kinds of icky stuff. It's got over 2,300 bacterial species living in there. So maybe it's time to give our belly button some extra TLC.
2, 1, 0, all engine running.
I can hardly imagine having to travel long distances without wheeled luggage, but these ones didn't pop until 1970. If you think about it, this means that the astronauts that went to the moon actually had to physically carry their baggage in the spaceship. A lot of other daily tasks are different in space. Since there's no washing machine in the International Space Station, how do astronauts do their laundry? The short answer is they don't. They just load up the dirty clothes into a resupply ship, then let them fall back into the atmosphere where it's incinerated. Our atmosphere contains astronaut underwear dust if you think about it. For their shower routines, astronauts had to go back to the old-fashioned way of bathing too. On the space station, they do not shower since the force of gravity is different and water doesn't flow as it should. So, they use liquid soap, water, and rinseless shampoo. They first squeeze the liquid soap and water from pre-made water pouches onto their skin. Next, they open the rinseless soap and add a little water to clean their hair. Towels are then used to wipe off the excess water, which is really precious in space. To make sure they recycle it, an airflow system nearby quickly evaporates excess water. All that water recycling is thanks to an invention called the Water Reclamation System, or the WRS. It was developed back in 2008 and helped solve water issues on the ISS. Up until then, water had to be imported from our planet on a regular basis, which was really expensive. What the WRS does is it gathers all the wastewater on board, the astronauts' leftover bathing water, humidity, condensation on the walls and windows, and then passes it through a series of filters. The resulting liquid is purified and great for drinking and washing. We even got the now famous microwave because of this space mission. When Neil Armstrong and his team landed back on Earth after their first visit to the moon, specialists thought they might have been exposed to dangerous space particles. The result? They had to be placed in planetary protection quarantine on their return, as soon as their space capsule safely splashed down in the Pacific Ocean on July 24, 1969. That specific 21-day quarantine for the Apollo 11 astronauts is one of the reasons why we have microwaves in our kitchens today. When they first returned from the moon, they initially spent their first few days in a mobile quarantine facility, or MQF. Sure, the MQF featured comfortable chairs, bunks, a toilet, and a shower, but it didn't leave a lot of space for fancy cooking. Since there was no room for a standard oven or grill, and to also reduce the potential fires that might have happened, NASA had to get creative. That's how the original countertop microwave oven was developed, to easily help astronauts get their meals without the hustle of a fully equipped kitchen. These days, you can see that first microwave in a museum in Oakland, California. The Apollo 11 crew also carried with them 12 Hasselblad cameras. They were intended to snap those valuable images of the moon's surface for all of us to see. So where are they today? Well, they were left there on the moon. Armstrong and his crew decided that the cameras were too heavy to carry back, especially since they wanted to bring back home over 50 pounds worth of rock samples. They did bring the film back though. These days, the International Space Station has way more advanced technology, like this zero-gravity 3D printer. It's responsible for making a socket wrench, which was the first tool ever made away from the planet's surface. The whole point of this 3D printer is to source square parts for any equipment that might get broken on board. This way, astronauts won't need to keep returning back to Earth to fix their gadgets, making it cheaper and faster. It may sound like a vacation, but did you ever think about what would happen if you never got out of bed? In the first 24 hours, one of the first things to see a change would be your lungs. Without gravity to pull them down into their standard position, the lower part of your lungs will crease. Coughing every now and then might help to reduce the effects. Going further, we'd start to lose small amounts of bone density each week, making our skeleton more fragile. It's also the reason why astronauts who can go for months without Earth's gravity at times need to move around for a minimum of 2 hours a day and make sure they have sufficient calcium in their diet. For this particular reason, they use a cool device called the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device, or ARED. The conditions on the International Space Station not only affect the bones of personnel on board, but their muscle mass. And some of the changes that happen to their bodies could be permanent if they're not careful. So, NASA needs to keep its astronauts on a strict exercise program. because you can't work out normally in microgravity, and ARID comes in to fix this. It's pretty much a resistance machine that helps astronauts to weightlift in a weightless environment. It also features a treadmill with a twist. It straps astronauts in for running. People visiting the International Space Station for longer periods of time can also develop a condition called spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome. The weightlessness in space causes the fluids in the body to shift towards the head. This may be the reason why the optical nerve gets swollen. I'll spare you the rest of the medical terms, but one of the most uncomfortable side effects is that most astronauts get blurry vision. To help with this, scientists developed a pair of contact lenses. And you look at pictures of astronauts wearing this device, it does seem pretty cool. For the time being, these lenses are just meant to measure how our eyes adapt to microgravity conditions. With the help of that data, we might be able to develop future gadgets that could combat the consequences. These contacts may not come with laser vision or holograms just yet, but another institution is looking to develop some pretty cool pairs of eyeglasses that might get closer. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration is looking at ways to manufacture computerized glasses that can help astronauts repair a ship or conduct an experiment in space. These glasses could help NASA upload how-to information guides onto the glasses directly so that astronauts could work without printed instruction manuals. Printed information is not only difficult to work with in times of emergency, but it's often not enough. So, astronauts literally need to dial back at the base for more information on how to fix a problem. Since a call from Mars to Earth can take up to 20 minutes to connect, you can imagine how helpful these glasses might be in real time. NASA initially tested this approach by strapping laptops to astronauts' heads. It soon became obvious they needed a better suited device. These glasses would use the same microchips we have in our smartphones. A gas leak can be a bad thing even in your own kitchen, let alone on the International Space Station. To make sure this problem doesn't happen, astronauts wear a system strapped to the front of their suits. It's just about the size of a shoebox. This device helps detect leaking water, seeping rocket fuel, or escaping oxygen. When living on the International Space Station, you might think astronauts need some sort of special clothing. The reality will surprise you. Inside the space shuttle, both the temperature and humidity are controlled, so astronauts can live there just like they would on Earth. Apart from those orange flight suits you often see in pictures that are needed during launch and re-entry, astronauts don't have special clothes. They just use the same clothes they'd use if they were on our planet.
Good day, Brightsiders. My name is Tom, and today let's pretend it's year 2003. The place? Indonesia, the island of Flores. A group of scientists found a mysterious cave in the green jungle. They went inside and discovered some primitive tools like sharpened stones. The researchers understood that this place was home to our distant ancestors hundreds of thousands of years ago. But then they found a very unusual skeleton. Careful analysis showed that it was the skeleton of a 30-year-old woman. Her height was only 3.5 feet. It's just above the waist of a grown-up person. That day, scientists discovered an unknown human ancestor. They called this species Homo floresiensis, or simply the Hobbit. More and more scientists arrived at the cave and carried out detailed excavations. The archaeologists found the remains of 8 more little people. It seemed that hundreds, thousands of years ago, there was an entire species of hobbits. Also, the scientists discovered the remains of some amazing creatures. It turned out that the cave was a real fantasy world in the distant past. For example, the researchers found skeletons of huge storks the size of pterodactyls. The hobbits seemed tiny compared to these birds. The scientists also discovered the remains of what seemed to be a relative of the modern elephant. The creature was the size of a cat. But the most astonishing discovery was the ancient Komodo dragon. The bone analysis showed that all these creatures were not the owners of the cave. More than 80% of the identifiable bones belonged to giant rats. Hundreds and thousands of rats the size of cats inhabited the place. It's possible that a real battle once occurred between them and the hobbits. Just imagine a world where the hobbits and small elephants run away from hordes of huge rats and hide in a cave, and massive storks are watching the events unfolding in front of their eyes. Anyway, the analysis of the remains showed that Homo floresiensis was a different species from modern humans. For example, the researchers analyzed the hobbit's wrist bone and found out that these bones resembled those of monkeys, not those of modern humans. The hobbits' heads had a flat, sloping forehead and a short face, and their teeth and jaws resembled those of Australopithecus. But then, the scientists uploaded all the data from the skull they found into a computer program to create a three-dimensional image of the hobbit's face. And the computer showed the head of a woman who looked much more like a modern human than like a monkey. But the same skull analysis also showed that the hobbit's brain was about 3 times as small as that of the average modern person. This suggests that their mental abilities were probably not very well developed. The analysis of the bones and tools showed that Homo floresiensis could have lived between 190,000 and 50,000 years ago. It's even possible they lived next to the ancestors of modern people. To find out exactly who the hobbits were and what branch of human evolution they belonged to, scientists started a large-scale investigation. A race of pygmies lived not far from the cave. Scientists have found a great similarity in the facial proportions of the hobbits and the pygmies. This tribe could be the direct descendants of the discovered species. The pygmies themselves claimed it was true. They brought food and flowers to the cave as a sign of respect to their ancestors. But to know for sure, scientists needed to do a genetic test. They hired 2 translators, from English to Indonesian, and from Indonesian to the Pygmy language. The researchers explained to the tribe what they wanted to do, and the Pygmies agreed. They showed sincere enthusiasm because they were also very interested in their history. The scientists took saliva samples from 32 volunteers. All they had to do was compare them with the DNA of the hobbits. But that's where a serious problem arose. Extracting DNA from such ancient remains turned out to be an impossible task. That's why the scientists decided to compare the DNA of the pygmies with the DNA of other people from nearby islands and countries. They studied the DNA of 500 modern people from 225 populations in East Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and other countries. The researchers wanted to find matches and differences between the pygmies' DNA and the DNA of the surrounding tribes. They also analyzed the history of the people from these areas and their migration patterns. When the investigation was over, the scientists had to admit they hadn't found any evidence that the pygmies had descended from the ancient hobbits. Homo floresiensis is likely a totally separate species, and its role in the development of modern humans is still unknown. The hobbits' height can be explained by such a phenomenon as Insular Dwarfism. Unique ecosystems appear on small and remote islands. There are often lots of food sources there, as well as there is a higher chance of survival thanks to the absence of dangerous animals. The climate contributes to development of an unusual ecosystem too. In such conditions, many living creatures become smaller. It happened to little hippos in Madagascar, and small elephants lived on the island of Flores. But sometimes, such ecosystems can create huge animals, just like it happened with the rats and the storks. By the way, gigantic rats still live on the island. In the modern world, there's an unusual village inhabited by dwarfs. There are many small houses there made of clay and stone that resemble little castles. In the streets you can find statues of fairies, large butterflies, and silver balls. The locals wear strange costumes: knight's armor, prince's dresses, green tunics, and yellow cloaks. At the main square, dwarfs fight with swords, dance, and sing songs. But there's no magic here. You're in the Dwarf Empire, and before you get inside, you have to pay a $50 entry fee. More than 10 years ago, a Chinese businessman met several dwarfs. They told him about the difficulties they've come across in the modern world. The businessman felt sympathy for these people and decided to invest $14 million in creating a themed town inhabited by dwarves. So in 2009, the World Echo Garden of Butterflies and the Dwarf Empire was born. About 100 people live in this place. Their height doesn't exceed 4.5 feet, and they're all younger than 50 years old. Every day, this place attracts hundreds of tourists. Thanks to this, dwarves have jobs and all the conditions for a good life. All employees of the village get a salary of several $100s per month, and they are also provided with free housing and free food. Many little people who have nowhere to go come to this place and find a new home and a new family. By the way, there's another village inhabited by dwarves in China. In Yangtze village, about 40% of all residents are born to be half the height of ordinary people, and no one knows exactly why this happens. Some believe the reason is the high content of mercury in the soil and the presence of toxic gases in the air. There's also a legend that says that once upon a time, a resident of this village caught a black turtle with unusually long legs. He decided to eat this creature, and because of this, the turtle cursed the village. Currently, the number of little people living there is decreasing, and new generations have regular height. Unfortunately, it's difficult to study this phenomenon because the place is closed to press and to visitors. 100 years ago, a small Iranian village existed, with its inhabitants no taller than 3 feet. And long before that, the inhabitants' height could reach 10 inches. This place is 1,500 years old and is considered the birthplace of dwarves. The short stature of people who lived there is associated with poor nutrition. The climate in the region is hot and dry, hence it was impossible to grow crops or breed cattle there. Mostly, they ate turnips and barley. The inhabitants of the village never tasted meat. Only in the 20th century, when roads were built and cars became available, it became possible to bring better food there. Now, about 700 people live in the village, and they are all of average height. But small houses made of stone and clay are the proof that dwarves lived there. Such houses are easier to build and heat, but the most important thing is they were invisible to foreign conquerors. The residents hoped that the unique architecture of the place might one day attract more tourists. Thank you for watching. My name is Tom, and see you in the next video, where we continue to learn every day together with Brightside. Bye.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.